Welcome, everyone, to the Game or Die podcast. Actually, hold on a second. Welcome, everyone, to the Game or Die Game of the Year podcast. My name is Ryan Moore, and oh man, I have been busy and I have played a lot of games this year, and I'm so excited to talk about them. So we've got a lot of stuff to cover over the next couple of hopeful hours as I talk about everything that I played this year. And then after I've done that, then I go through my top 10 list of the year. That's kind of how this has gone since about 2019. So if you've ever checked out the podcast, you kind of know what's going to happen. But if you've never catched one of the Game of the Year podcast, I really like diving deep into what I liked about the games and what I didn't like about the games that I played this year. And then at the end, like I said, I will cover every game that I've categorized and labeled. This year has been a little bit interesting, especially the last couple of months, because we moved and that kind of put a damper on a few things. But man, I am so excited for this podcast. I am really enjoying just reminiscing about this crazy year for me and my family. So you know what? Let's get started with what I played this year, starting from January 1st, 2024. 1 year ago, technically in about 15 minutes from today, I played The Making of Karateka or Karateka. Really doesn't matter how you pronounce it. Even the creator said he doesn't really care how people pronounce that game. But this was a game made by Jordan Mechner, who was influential in created the Prince of Persia series. But back before Prince of Persia, he made a game called Karateka or Karateka, and it's a karate game, and he used rotoscoping as the technique to have fluid motion for the characters, and it's a really interesting quote-unquote game. And the reason why is because it's actually a documentary / video game. It's a video game that you buy and load up on Steam, and it has a menu system, and you are able to go through the menus and it will play video clips of this documentary. And in the middle of those video clips, you can pull to the side and view his notes for the game and all this extra stuff that he's cataloged, Jordan Mechner has cataloged over the years. And then after each chapter of the documentary, you get to play the stuff that they talk about. Old demos, betas, and all that stuff, and it is unbelievably cool. I was blown away by Digital Eclipse's care for not only Jordan Mechner's work, but just this whole way of making a video game documentary be totally different and I'm trying to think of the word, but totally interactive, like only video games can do. It's something really special. I think it's about 6 hours long. I have it as 2.5, but that's not counting gameplay. And the reason why is, like I said, you can spend hours if you want, playing these demos and these betas and these finished products, and Digital Eclipse recreates and does their own spin on some of his games and ideas and betas and prototypes. It's really interesting. It's something that I would highly suggest seeking out. They not only did that, but they also produced this year, and I unfortunately did not get a chance to get to it, the Llama Story, which is Jeff Minter. Jeff Minter is also another kind of influential, weird auteur in video game director slash, game designers. He kind of does his own thing. And if you ever played Tempest 2000 or Tempest or Space Giraffe on the Xbox 360, that's Jeff Minter. And he made a game not too long ago. I think that came out last year, Akira, which is really, really interesting, but it kind of goes into the same vein of Tempest. But Making in Karateka is something that I sat down on January 1st of 2024 and played through, and it was really, really fun. Then I chose to play through, because it came out the next day on January 2nd. I played through Close to the Sun. And this is going to live in my brain for the rest of my life as one of the biggest memories of my streaming career, because that's kind of the day that I sat down and said, I'm going to start streaming every day. That was the game that not only I sat down and streamed, but I played through. And man, it was a really fun, interesting game. Close to the Sun is an indie game by Teacup and a Storm Studios. Really cool name for a studio, by the way. And you are in this alternate reality where you're a girl on this ship that is going to this island. And this island is uninhabited, but it's supposed to be like this big, booming new city. And you get a lot of weird BioShock vibes from it, because it's really BioShock in a different atmosphere. And this whole alternate reality is when Tesla actually got found and discovered and won over Edison. So Nikolai Tesla is the guy, and he's created all these really cool, unique machines and inventions, and created this whole utopia society on this island. And you go to that island, and your sister basically brings you there saying, hey, I need you to come over here, come to this island and find me. And so that's where you start, and you go through this island. There's monsters, and it's a really cool game. And the reason why I played this is because it was on Game Pass. Oh man, it was so fun. Game Pass is unbelievable service. And I'm not big into services. I never have been. When these services started becoming more subscription based, like when Netflix went to like this big subscription based service, and all the streaming services were going subscription based, and even programs were going subscription based, I was baffled. It was like, why? Why can I not buy a program or an application? Why do I have to subscribe to it? And we all know the reason why. Money, right? We all know that money is the reason behind us having to subscribe to everything year in, year out, monthly in some cases, and it's just automatically generating revenue for those big companies. And we don't need to get into all that, because we're celebrating the year tonight. And instead of being dour and down and, pissed off at certain things, we're going to gloss over some of that stuff. So I'll definitely touch on certain things that I did not like or whatever, but we're not going to dwell on it tonight. We're going to have a good time. So Close to the Sun is a really interesting game. I was able to finish it in 4.5 hours, which was really nice. And that kind of kicked off my streaming, career this year. I've streamed since Justin TV days. I was on Justin TV back when I owned my own game store. We would do Rock Band tournaments at night, and I would stream that with a crappy little webcam and barely any audio, and it was awful. And it's a bummer I don't have that footage archived, but I've done so much stuff with videos and cameras and editing over the course of my life, even since I was a young kid, and I don't have most of that stuff. It's all been lost to time. I'm okay with it. I'm okay losing that stuff to time, so it's not that big of a deal to me. But 2024 And Close to the Sun was the first game that I beat on stream all the way through. I would stream gameplay here and there, but Close to the Sun was the game where I played the entirety on stream in one or two sittings. I can't really remember. It was a year ago at this point. Give me a break. But man, it was really fun. And then I started gaining some more followers after that, streaming on Twitch exclusively at that point, and getting some Twitch followers and viewers and people kind of tuning in, but they wanted a lot more retro games. As I would talk about my game store, those retro game stories really captivated a lot of people. So I decided, you know what? I should probably play some retro games. That's what I love doing anyways. Especially, and if you ever listened to the podcast over the last several years, you've been hearing me say, this year is kind of going to be really slow. This year is not going to be a great year for video games. The actual AAA budget, huge, massive studio games are not going to be that great. So, or big, or as many in a lot of cases as well. So I started reverting back to retro games, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, a little bit of Nintendo 64 and PlayStation here and there. I was kind of a little bit sick of PlayStation because last year, 2023's Retrocember was covering all PlayStation games. So if you don't know, and we're in the middle of it technically, Retrocember is something I started several years ago where I cover and talk about and celebrate old retro games all throughout the month of December. So last year for Retrocember, I covered PlayStation games. I was saying it was going to be 32-bit consoles, and so Sega Saturn was going to be included in that, but it just never happened. So we'll keep that for another Retrocember. But it was all PlayStation. I was kind of a little bit bored, so I didn't really play a lot of PlayStation games at the beginning of this year. So I was like, man, shoot, I want to not just dip my toes into some games, just here and there sporadically, duck in, duck out type of gameplay. I wanted to sit down and beat some games all the way through because I got that high from doing that with Close to the Sun. So I kind of created this show or themed show for my streams. And that was kind of what I did a lot of this year, was creating a show for all these streams that I was doing daily, like a TV show. And one of my shows was Series Fatigue, where I would go through an entire series. And that was really, really fun. So Series Fatigue is basically like, I'm just going through this series. Mega Man was one of the ones that I actually was going to do originally. That was going to be the first Series Fatigue. I'm not good at Mega Man. I'm terrible at Mega Man. So I didn't want to start off with something that would frustrate me, because whenever I sat down with Mega Man as a kid, I would get kind of frustrated. And when you stream and you're playing games in front of a camera and an audience, you can get that overwhelmed feeling very quickly. And I do every once in a while. I'll totally admit to that. So I always tell myself, you know what, let's hold off on the Mega Man. And instead, I started with something that was a little bit easier, something that I have a lot of fond memories of, the series Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo. So Donkey Kong Country, I started with the first one on Super Nintendo and played through all of that. And that was really, really fun. People would come in and join in on going, oh my gosh, I love this song. And we would talk about David Wise, I believe David Wise, right? Or no, yeah, David Wise's Donkey Kong Country, Rare, game music composer, and then Grant Kirkhope was the other game or Rare developer game composer for Rareware. But that was on the 64, so like Banjo-Kazooie and things like that. Grant Kirkhope was Banjo-Kazooie. David Wise composed all the music for Donkey Kong Country, and oh my gosh, if I had the time to play some music clips and stuff and all that, maybe next year for next game of the year. Man, it's some of the best video game music of all time. Top 10 game music of all time easily would be David Wise. So I had a fun time playing that, and people would pop in and, start discussing the gameplay or the levels or the music, and we had a really good time. So I wanted to keep that train rolling. So I started Donkey Kong Country 2. And what's really interesting, after I beat Donkey Kong 1 or Donkey Kong Country 1, Donkey Kong Country 2 also has a subtitle, and it's Diddy's Kong Quest, or Diddy Kong's Quest. And you can easily mix that up, and you got to be very careful with the actual titling of it. But everyone just calls it Donkey Kong Country 2, or DKC2 as an abbreviation. And that's where I started getting really excited, because that's where a lot of people started really showing up for the streams. We had so many times every day where I would play these games and people would be cheering me on the boss fights. And oh man, you know me. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you know me. I'm terrible at boss fights. I suck at boss fights, and I hate boss fights. So it's definitely something that I've struggled with over the course of my life. And it's interesting too, because even last night on last night's stream, we've been playing through Behemoth, a VR game, and the boss fights in that are incredible. And so I'm like, man, okay, maybe I do enjoy some boss fights if they're done really well. Unfortunately, a lot of old retro games relied on very cheap tactics and pattern memorization, which I've never been a fan of in boss fights. So I struggled, but I had viewers cheering me on. And that's really what drove me to go, you know what? Shoot, this streaming thing is really fun. Even if I'm mad at the game, even if I'm pissed off at the boss fight, I have this crowd of people cheering me on, encouraging me to get better and do better, and, you memorize the patterns. Maybe they would slip a little hint here or there in the chat, and it was just so much fun. So I really liked that, and I had a lot of fun with that. And Donkey Kong Country 2 just amps up everything. It does what a good sequel should do. And it takes everything that made the first game good and just cranks it up to 11, right? It just amps everything up. It makes it bigger and better and stronger and faster and just more enjoyable. More, right? So I loved that. And Donkey Kong Country 2 also has the start that takes place on a pirate ship, and King K. Rool is a, captain now. So he's Captain K. Rool, the villain of the game. And so, man, it was just awesome. So we beat Donkey Kong Country 1, we jumped into Donkey Kong Country 2, and I had a blast with that. However, and it was really weird too, because I kind of blew through Donkey Kong Country 1. That took about 4 hours to beat on stream. Donkey Kong Country 2 doubled that by 8 hours. So I took a couple streams, I believe. I was streaming for about 3 hours a stream. And so it took a couple streams to, finish that game. And it was interesting because Donkey Kong Country 1 I blew through, just breezed right through. Super easy. All the way through, all levels, done. Then Donkey Kong Country 2 came along, and halfway through the game, I was just like, man, this is a pretty easy game. So it was kind of interesting. And then halfway through the game, like right after I said it, oh man, this is really easy. It came to a boss fight where I just got destroyed, and the game's difficulty just spiked to a crazy high level. And that was insane. I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? I'm sitting here retrying this boss for like at least 30 times, just dying over and over and over again. And I was just like exhausted. But I got through it. And I do remember that boss fight at the very, very end. Captain K. Rool was so crazy too. That was a really fun boss fight for the fact that I had, again, people around cheering me on and encouraging me. That was fun. Once I finished that, I was like, all right, cool. Well, now we come to Donkey Kong Country 3, the one that I never finished. When I was a kid and on the Super Nintendo, I did finish Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2, and I beat them with emulators back in the early 2000s when I was living on my own and in college and things like that. So I beat both of those games a few times, but I never beat Donkey Kong Country 3. I remember my best friend at the time really, really liked that game, and he was showing me it when he rented it. The thing with Donkey Kong Country 3, number one, is it came out at the very end of the Super Nintendo's lifespan. The Nintendo 64 was either coming out like within a month or two or already out. So Super Nintendo was like in the back end, the rear view mirror. Nintendo 64 was the new greatest and latest thing that everyone cared about. So it was a little bit interesting to hear people like my friend praise Donkey Kong Country 3. And I did not like it. I did rent it. And the reason why is because I was Donkey Kong Country, right? That series is so fun. However, Donkey Kong Country 3 takes the good, awesome protagonist of Dixie Kong, the one with the yellow ponytail that can twirl her head around like a helicopter, or her hair around like a helicopter, and kind of float. She's basically Princess Toadstool from Super Mario 2, right? Everyone who plays Super Mario Brothers 2 on the NES loves Princess Toadstool. Why? Because she's the best character, because she's got that floaty jump, right? Same thing with Dixie Kong. But they removed Diddy Kong from Donkey Kong Country 3. It's kind of weird. Donkey Kong Country 1 has Donkey Kong and then Diddy Kong as the two playable characters. Donkey Kong Country 2 removes Donkey Kong because he gets captured at the very beginning by Captain K. Rool, and you play as Diddy Kong and then the new ape, Dixie Kong. And Dixie Kong, super awesome, right? We just talked about that. Then in Donkey Kong Country 3, they removed Diddy. He's gone. And now you play as primarily Dixie Kong, super awesome. And then they introduce a third Kong, Kiddy Kong. And Kiddy Kong is an actual baby. He's wearing like a onesie jammy, and whenever he falls and gets hit and you lose a life, he sits there and throws a tantrum. Like he kicks his feet on the ground and pounds the ground with his fist and starts crying, going wah, and it's just so annoying. It's like Super Mario World 2, or Yoshi's Island as everyone else knows it. But in Yoshi's Island, what was the one major annoying thing that everyone talks about? Baby Mario's cry. Same thing with Diddy or baby Kiddy Kong. Oh man, it's just so annoying. So it immediately off-put me of that game, just seeing Kiddy Kong throw a tantrum every time you died. And these games, you die a lot in these games. They're platformers. That's what you do. So I was really, really hesitant on that game from the get-go, from when it first came out. And I never, ever beat it. So I sat down on stream and we beat it. It took around 6-ish hours. And I think there was a few levels that I just despised. But there was one in particular, I even remember it still now, and I get smiley and giddy when I think about how fun and creative this level was. You're in a forest level, and you're going along, but it starts getting dark. And overcast and then rainy, and those rain and wind effects are happening. And then lightning starts striking the ground. And it took me a while to figure out what was going on, the gimmick of it. Like I knew, oh, hey, it's rainy, it's stormy, it's kind of, lightning's going to strike me. But there's a certain pattern that you have to follow to be able to finish the level. So it took me like 15, 20, 30 tries just to amp that up. And it was kind of crazy. So I really did enjoy playing through that and having a good time with Donkey Kong Country 2. And it was crazy. It was so much fun to be able to play through that and be able to say I beat the Super Nintendo Donkey Kong Country trilogy on stream. So Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and then 3 under the belt. Then at the beginning of January, kind of like at the end of January, there was a game that got announced the prior year, and I don't know if I was super excited about it. I'm, of course, talking about Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. Now, again, if you know me, I love Prince of Persia. I was just talking about the making of Karateka with Jordan Mechner, who created Prince of Persia, and I'm so psyched that hopefully they'll do a sequel to that making of and do the making of Prince of Persia, because that's what I really want to see. But oh my gosh, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown, they showed it off at Summer Games Fest in 2022. And I hated the trailer. I went, what is this garbage? It was in the middle of, pushing a lot of DEI and agenda, EGS and all that stuff. And the prince, has this characteristic of not the prince. I'm like, what is going on with this? This is weird. And then they go, oh, you don't actually play as the prince in Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. You play as his bodyguard. And we all went, what? And then it didn't help for the fact that the trailer also had this really terrible rap dubstep mix to it. And we're like, this does not feel like anything remotely related to Prince of Persia. Why even call it that in the first place? However, the gameplay looked awesome. And hey, we play video games for what? The gameplay. Now, I'm a big proponent of both story and gameplay in my video games. I love story in my video games. It's primarily why I play most single-player games. But I like a balance. And it looked like this had really bad or no real good story to it. And so I was kind of a little upset about that. However, once I started playing it, and I did opt for not buying the game right out directly. Instead, what I did is I bought a month of Ubisoft's subscription service. I think it's called Uplay or Ubisoft Connect or whatever. They keep changing the name of it, and it's super weird. But Ubisoft Connect or Uplay or whatever it's called is a subscription service where you give them, I think it was $17 or $19 a month, and you get a back catalog of games, a selected amount of games from Ubisoft's back catalog, and also some of their new releases. Prince of Persia: Lost Crown was one of them. So I was like, I could either buy this game at $50 or $60. It was a full price game, and it felt really weird at that price. That was kind of another talking point a lot of people made. It was like, this is a full price game, and it should not be, because it's a quote unquote Metroidvania, a backtracking exploration game, like in the vein of Castlevania or Metroid, hence the terrible genre term, like we've talked about billions of times on this podcast. So I was like, I could either buy this game, which I don't want to do, and spend a ton of money that I don't think is needed or deserved, or I can basically rent it for a month for $17. And that's what I did. Now, what was really cool about that is I dumped 40 hours into that game to beat it. And again, this is another one of those games that I beat and had a blast doing. Not only at this time did I play through Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown and beat it, but I also hit affiliate on Twitch at that point. I worked my butt off throughout the month to gain followers and or not subscribers. That happens with affiliate, but affiliate basically means now you can start making money. You can also have emotes and channel points and point redemptions and all that fun stuff that I now have on this channel is because I gained a certain amount of followers and all that stuff. You have to hit a bunch of achievements basically in 1 month span to do that. And I was able to do that in the month of January. So this next January 2025, I will have my first Twitch anniversary or affiliate anniversary or whatever it is, Twitch anniversary. And we're going to have some fun with that. We're going to do a big celebration. I'm going to try and plan it a little bit better than the last couple of months. But yeah, I loved The Prince of Persia, The Lost Crown. It was really, really fun. And I'll talk more about it a little bit later on in the podcast. I don't want to get too deep into it yet. Then I kind of went back after I finished that. After dumping 40 hours into Prince of Persia, I wanted something a little bit more relaxed. And over the course of doing a lot of retro game streams, retro games are not that long. A lot of them are easily beatable within just a few hours. So I was playing a lot of retro games, and then there was one game that I just wanted to go back to and show because I played the earlier original version of it on a retro game night stream. So I loaded up the new version called ToeJam and Earl Back in the Groove, and I beat that on stream because it's a very short game. And I beat ToeJam and Earl, I believe, on stream as well a couple times over the course of this year. But Back in the Groove was 2019 a release where they took ToeJam and Earl, which is a Sega Genesis game where it's a roguelike exploration game where you basically have to find pieces of your spaceship on Earth, but Earth is like totally not actually Earth, has no resemblance to Earth at all. But they made a new version of it in 2019. I loved it. It was one of my game of the year. It was my top game of the year of 2019, I believe, because that's how fun it is. I think it's a really, really fun game. So I had a blast with that. Then, because I wanted to continue on playing some platforming games and we were doing series fatigue and I beat Donkey Kong Country 1, 2, and 3, those were all Super Nintendo games, we didn't get another Donkey Kong Country game until Donkey Kong Country Returns. And that was a Wii game. So they skipped, Donkey Kong 64 is a Donkey Kong game and it has a lot of the same characters, but it is a very, very different game. It is not a country game in name either. So I don't classify it as a Donkey Kong Country game. So they skipped for Donkey Kong Country, the Nintendo 64, and the GameCube. And then when the Wii came out, we got Donkey Kong Country Returns. And this was a really cool game because I actually saw it before it came out at E3. I used to own a video game store, and back in that time when I did own that game store, I was able to go to E3 and I was able to see Donkey Kong Country Returns in the Nintendo booth and play it. I have kind of a weird story about that, but I'll save it for another time. I might tell it, I might not. But Donkey Kong Country Returns was like this really, really cool throwback, this retro throwback before they started doing a lot of remasters. And so we got this platformer that had a lot of really cool little things there. It's made by Retro Studios and they're phenomenal. They're like a second party Nintendo studio at this point. And when I was at E3, I actually talked to one of the developers and they showed me some cool things that they put in, little Easter eggs and stuff like that, to kind of help me understand what the game was and what vibe they were going with and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool. I really, really enjoyed that. However, that game is really long. It took me 15 hours to beat Donkey Kong Country Returns. And I can't remember if it's Donkey Kong Country Returns or Tropical Freeze that I had a really, really a couple bad boss experiences on stream, to the point where I actually rage quit a couple times, and that was kind of a bummer. So I was still in that retro mood, and so I started going, okay, what other series now that Donkey Kong Country is done, and we'll get to some of the other ones, but what else could I play? And someone brought up a game, and they said, hey, why don't you play this? And I started going, yeah, I could play that. It's a pretty short game. And I played Star Fox 64, and it's pretty interesting because I just covered that on RetroSember just a few days ago. Like I said, RetroSember is that video series that I do every December, and this year we're doing Nintendo 64. So I covered and played through Star Fox 64 not only once this year, but twice this year on stream. Actually, with RetroSember, it's a recorded video series, but I did record myself playing through the entire game and did a different path. Star Fox 64 is super cool because it is a linear on-rails space shooter, but it has branching paths. So you can branch out and do different paths in the level, and if you complete certain objectives that are not told to you, they are totally hidden in secret. But if you complete those, you branch off to different paths on the map menu screen. And so it does add a lot of replayability. And it was really cool because that was the game that introduced the Rumble Pack on the Nintendo 64 controller. The Rumble Pack was included in that game. So that was really fun. So I beat that, and then I was like, well, I beat Star Fox 64. We might as well play the other Star Foxes. So then I went through and went back, and I was kind of bummed I did it out of order. I really like doing playing and beating video games in order of chronological sequence of release. If it's a prequel or whatever, I like doing chronological release order. So I would have rather played Star Fox on Super Nintendo, Star Fox 2 on Super Nintendo, and then Star Fox 64. And we'll talk about Star Fox 2 in a second. So I kind of did it out of order. I played the third game in the series. Then I went back and said, you know what? Let's play Star Fox 1 and then go from there. Then I played Star Fox 1, and I beat that on stream too, because that only took an hour. These Star Fox games are really, really short. It's weird. I wish that they weren't that short, but hey, whatever. So I played Star Fox 64, then Star Fox 1, beat that, and then I played Star Fox 2. And Star Fox 2 has got a very interesting history. Because Star Fox was created by, I cannot remember the name of the company. It's not ERD, but it is a different company, Polyphony Digital, I believe, maybe. But Nintendo proper did not make Star Fox. It's a Nintendo property at this point, but they did not develop the original Star Fox game. And Star Fox 1 was super interesting on the Super Nintendo because it had that Super FX chip, an actual physical chip on the cartridge that allowed it to do different 3D capable things that the hardware, the actual console, could not. So the game had a special chip designed to unlock certain features or allow certain features. Star Fox 2 was in development and shown off all around the world, at trade shows before it was going to come out. But at the very last moment, wow, I'm butchering his name for whatever reason. Shigeru Miyamoto. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I butchered his name that many times. Miyamoto said, no, we're not going to release Star Fox 2. Even though it's completed, we're not going to release it. And the whole reasoning was this Nintendo 64 is coming out. The Nintendo 64 is this new, great, powerful console, and our games are going to look a lot better on it. And if Star Fox 2 comes out, it's just going to look bad compared to the Nintendo 64 stuff. So we're just going to shelve it. And that was weird. And it wasn't released officially in any capacity by Nintendo until the Super Nintendo Classic Edition or the Super Nintendo Mini Console came out in 2017. Now, there was this era back in the mid 2010s, 2015 or 16 and 17, where Nintendo put out these mini consoles of Nintendo and Super Nintendo. They're basically emulator boxes. That's really what they are. They're official emulator boxes. So they made a Super Nintendo, or they made a Nintendo one and then a Super Nintendo one. And that was really cool. We all loved that when that came out. The Super Nintendo one was very special because it officially released Star Fox 2. So if you played Star Fox and I think got through the game and beat the game, or if you played to the second level or whatever and you backed out to the main menu, you unlocked Star Fox 2. And that was super cool. And I'm a big emulation fan. I've been in emulation since the late 90s, since high school. In 1999, I was doing emulation in my computer class, and I failed computer class because of it. My parents weren't really happy, but whatever. I became an IT guy, so it's fine. So when I played Star Fox 2 for the first time, it wasn't this official release. It was an internet ROM, a hack that someone released a non-finished, but mostly finished. Like, I believe the completion percentage was like 97% complete online back in the early 2000s. So I did play on my original Xbox. I do remember playing Star Fox 2. But it ran really poorly. It just didn't feel right, and I never finished it. Then, when this Star Fox 2 official ROM came out, I unlocked it. I played through it on the classic console, and then I transferred that ROM over to my main ROM collection, so I have an official copy. So it is mine. It's an official backup, right? And so we played that on stream, and that was really fun, and I beat that. Then I was like, oh man, I don't know if I want to go into, the next Star Fox stuff, because that's where it went to the GameCube. And I was like, I don't know if I want to play that yet. So we went back and did some more retro gaming, and I played the Batman game on NES. This is one of my go-tos for retro emulation gaming is Batman. I love Batman. Batman's one of my favorite characters of all time. And I just had a blast with it. And it was really fun too, because I was being encouraged, by the viewers to continue on with it. When I get to a point where I'm dying multiple times, I usually get either frustrated and rage quit, or I just go, you know what? I'm not having fun anymore. I'm going to drop this. But a few of those viewers, man, oh my gosh, shout out to them, because they encouraged me so much. No, you got this, dude. You got this. Keep at it. You'll get it. You'll get it. And I was like, shoot, I don't want to rage quit on camera. I don't want to do this. So I just said, you know what? Fine. I'm going to sit here and retry. I hate doing that. It really makes me angry, but I'm going to try it anyways. And I did. And oh man, I had a blast. It was really, really fun. And I actually beat it. It's one of the clips in the Twitch channel where we were able to clip it when I beat the Joker. And yes, it is a movie tie-in game by Sunsoft. And oh my gosh, it is so stupidly good. The music is amazing. It follows the story of the original 1989 Tim Burton movie to an extent. And the Joker is like 10 feet tall in the game and massive compared to Batman, but that's neither here nor there. It's an awesome game. I beat it and I had a blast with it. Then I played Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. This came out on the Wii U. Yeah, remember the Wii U before the Switch? Not a lot of people do. It's really fun to talk about the Wii U because I personally never had a problem with it. I thought people hated it for the wrong reasons. And it's a bummer too because there was some really good games on it. However, most of those games are now on the Switch, Tropical Freeze included. So I played through Donkey Kong Country before. I owned it on the Wii U, and it was really interesting because I tell this story every time the game comes up in conversation. When I played Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze on the Wii U, I dropped it for some reason or another. I think I just got busy with life and work. And so I dropped it in the middle of playing through it. And there was this one boss that I remember going, I tried it a few times, I dropped it, and then never came back to it. So I left that game unfinished. My best friend came over and was like, hey, I remember you telling me about Tropical Freeze. It's a good game, right? I'm like, yeah, it's a really good game. And he said, why don't you show it to me? And I went, all right, cool. And so I played through it and picked up where I left off. I loaded up the boss fight. I beat the boss within 5 minutes, and then the credits roll. So I actually stopped playing the game in the middle of the last boss fight of the game, and I had no idea. So it was kind of crazy to me that I just didn't finish it. And I was so bummed. Oh man, it was such a bummer. But Tropical Freeze, or Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, then came out on the Switch, and that's the version that we played earlier this year, back in January or February, and it was so much fun. However, there's a few boss fights that I rage quit at. Oh my gosh, it was just the worst. I had so much trouble with just a few of these bosses that I just had to stop. And yeah, I'm not looking forward to some of those, but Tropical Freeze does have some amazing music. It was really funny because this Game of the Year podcast that I do, I tailor it to what I want to hear people talk about. I talk about the things and subjects in these podcasts that I want to hear people talk about on podcasts that I listen to. So Giant Bomb was one of the podcasts I used to listen to, and their Game of the Year stuff used to be awesome. And one of the Games of the Year podcasts that they did when Tropical Freeze originally came out in 2013, 2014, they were like, hey, best music category. And someone brought a few tracks to play, and they were just really crappy, just generic. And everyone made fun of that person, going, why would you bring that? It's so stupid and dumb. That game's dumb. And it was like, dude, you picked out some of the worst possible music to showcase, because the boss music, especially the first boss in the first world, it's called Big Top Bop, is phenomenal. It's so stupidly good that it is one of my top 10 video game tracks of all time. That's how good it is. It was the original intro to my YouTube channel intro. That's how good it is. It is something that no one talks about, no one has heard of, but it is one of the best video game soundtracks, whatever, of all time. And I'm not joking. I'm not being facetious. It is amazing. Go listen to it. It'll probably be in this podcast at the very end. So I continued on with the Retro Train, and then back in February, I then finished Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers on the NES. And man, that is another childhood classic. If you haven't played the Chip 'n Dale Rescue Ranger game on NES, there's 2 of them. Don't play the second one, only the first one. The first one's the best. It's really good, and you can beat it in one sitting. It takes roughly about an hour. It's fantastic. And then we did some arcade games. I played through the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle original 1989 or 91. I can't remember the copyright on that. But the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade game I played through. And then we played through Turtles in Time. But before we move on, I actually owned a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle arcade cabinet. Not like the arcade one up like that I have behind me, like that you can buy nowadays that are like sub miniature compact. I'm talking full blown quarter munching 500-pound arcade cabinet full of wood. It is so stupidly hardcore heavy, and it was made back then. It was originally and I think I bought it for like, I want to say $700. I can't remember. It was that or Simpsons, one or the other. It was a few $100s, but it was so worth it. It was one of the arcade cabinets I always said I wanted to buy. And so I bought that arcade cabinet, and then I stuffed it in my video game store that I owned. And people would come into the store all the time and go, "Oh my gosh, you got a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle cabinet." And then they would proceed to throw quarters in it and play through the game. And it was so much fun. So we had a really fun time back in February doing that. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1, and then the second or sequel to that game in the arcade, which was Turtles in Time. Everyone loves Turtles in Time. It's like their favorite, but I never really got into it. It was never the biggest one that I just didn't enjoy it as much. There's some good stuff in it, for sure. There's some really good stuff, especially that mode 7 where you grab a foot soldier and toss him into the screen. That is always super, super cool. But I just never got into Turtles in Time like everyone else did. Then we continued on with Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I believe I beat Sonic the Hedgehog 1 on stream the previous year. So I already played through Sonic 1 back in 2023, so I didn't want to do it for 2024. I didn't want to repeat myself. And then I was trying to figure out what to play after I beat Sonic 2, and I had a viewer suggest Ape Escape. And I remember when Ape Escape came out on the original PlayStation, it was the first game that used the analog controllers, because if you didn't know, the original PlayStation did not come with dual analog sticks. It was just a normal D-pad, the cross, triangle, circle, and square buttons, start and select, and that's in the shoulder left and right, 1 and 2. And that's it. There was no analog sticks. In the middle of the PlayStation's lifespan, they came out with the dual analog stick or dual shock controller, and that's when Ape Escape came out. And it utilized those controls only. So you had to have one of the dual shock controllers to actually play Ape Escape. Now, at the time when I had that, I remember there was a demo that included Ape Escape on it, a demo disc. Remember demo discs, how stupidly fun they were and super cool? Well, demo discs, there was one that had Ape Escape, and oh my gosh, I remember loving everything about all the demo stuff except for Ape Escape and Spyro the Dragon. Those two were just very childish in nature from what I thought, but I was so wrong. I will 100% admit that I was wrong for not liking Ape Escape. So the viewer actually coerced me into trying to play through Ape Escape. And I was like, dude, I hate monkeys and I never liked this. It was a very childish game. He's like, just try it, Ryan. Just try it. You'll love it. And I was like, all right, cool. So if you ever want me to play games, just tell me to play some games and I'll totally try them out. I'm always about the old college try. I will always give a full-on mind blank clear first impression game. If you want me to play a game, I will clear out my mind and look at it with clear eyes. So I did, and I ended up loving playing through Ape Escape. It was so much fun. So much fun, in fact, that I actually went through and started playing Ape Escape 2 a little bit later on. But we did Ape Escape 1 first, and then we went to 2. in the middle of that, I played through Little Nemo the Dream Master, another one that I was so encouraged by viewership. You guys telling me, Ryan, you got this, you got this. Don't quit now, don't quit now. That kept me going through so many of those old retro game streams. I was so happy to have people tell me, yeah, you got this, you got this. Oh man, it was so much fun. Then I did actually end up playing through Sonic the Hedgehog 1 because I was kind of floundering at that point. Like I said, it was really weird. And like I said, I'm not going to try and be down in dog on a bunch of stuff or dog pile on it. But there was a lot of times where I just kept going, this year is going to suck for video games. This year is going to suck. There's no games coming out. 2023 saw so many big AAA titles release that all those studios aren't going to be able to release anything for the next 5 to 7 years because that's how long it takes video games to be made now for some dumb reason. So I was really, really upset about that. And I had to play a lot of retro games that I kind of didn't want to, but because I had so many people telling me, you got this, or yeah, don't quit now, I ended up sticking with a lot of games like Little Nemo Dream Master and then Sonic the Hedgehog. And then I was like, you know what? I want to play some fun games that I haven't beat or I have beaten. It's been decades. So I then started the Cruisin' USA or the Cruisin' series. First on the Nintendo 64, the Cruisin' USA. And then Cruisin' World, which was the sequel, and then Cruisin' Exotica. Now, just like the San Francisco Rush series or the Road Rash series, the first game takes place in a select area. This case is the USA, the United States of America. So you race across multiple sections of the country, all the way from point A to point B. Point A starting in like the top of California and point B ending up in Washington, D.C. And so you race across the country. So you go through a couple stages of California, Arizona, Nevada, like Las Vegas, I believe, Iowa, Illinois, Texas, and then you end up in Washington, D.C., and your car at the very end, if you get first place, ends up at the top on the roof of the White House, which is just ridiculous. The sequel then goes on and has Cruisin' World, where instead of racing across the U.S., you race across the entire world. So now you're racing in Asia, China, Japan, Russia. I'm trying to think of other places. Africa. The African level was actually really fun. That I think was my favorite. The Russian and African levels were my favorite in Cruisin' World. So I played through Cruisin' USA, then I went to the sequel Cruisin' World, and then Cruisin' Exotica. Cruisin' Exotica is a weird one because they kind of just took a lot of the world stages and plopped them back in like it was filler. But then they went crazy. And you're racing through Atlantis. So you're racing underwater and you go through Atlantis. Or you race on the moon and stuff like that, or Mars. And it's just like, okay, you've gone too far. You've gone too far. But I did enjoy playing through that entire series on the Nintendo 64. That was great. And then, and we'll cover this a little bit later, so I'll kind of like blast through some of these. The Tomb Raider series. Tomb Raider was basically one of my biggest streams throughout the year. And the reason why is because Tomb Raider was remastered. Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 were remastered. And oh my gosh, I had so much fun with it. I had a blast with the Tomb Raider Remaster series. Tomb Raider 1 was a game I never beat. And so I was already excited to play through it. And then Tomb Raider 2, and then Tomb Raider 3. It was all of 3 of these games that I grew up loving and playing. I played through and beat 2 and 3. but I never beat 1. And it was really fun to be able to finally say, yeah, I beat Tomb Raider 1, and again on stream. So I played through and beat Tomb Raider 1 Remastered. That took about 15 hours, but it was a good 15 hours, man. It was great. Then I jumped back and played Batman Return of the Joker on the NES. So there's a couple of Return of the Joker games, the NES version and the Genesis version. The Genesis version sucks. It's really bad. But I did enjoy playing through Batman Return of the Joker on NES. Then I started going, well, I want to get back into platformers. What do I do? And I played through Donkey Kong Country Land, or Donkey Kong Land, which was the console or the mobilized version of Donkey Kong Country on the original Game Boy, which was really, really weird. Donkey Kong Country, sorry, I'm butchering that name again. Donkey Kong Land is basically just a watered down Game Boy original version of Donkey Kong Country, but there's a lot of differences in it too. So I enjoyed playing through that. Then, so I was kind of bouncing back and forth. I was doing 2 streams a day during this point. For the first few months of 2024, I played and I did a stream in the afternoon and then a stream in the evening. And that was really fun, but it was exhausting. It was so tiring to play through 2 different games at 2 different times every day. But it was a lot of fun. And you can see, like, I'm only still in February, the second month of the year, and I've already beaten almost 30 games at this point. That's crazy. That's a crazy amount of games to play and beat in 2 months of the year. Don't worry, it slows down a lot. But I played through Donkey Kong Land, and then I played through Tomb Raider 2 Remastered because, like I said, Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 were one complete package. It was super fun because it came out on Valentine's Day. And I remember my wife and I had Valentine's Day lunch. We didn't do like a dinner thing, but we did a lunch at our favorite pizza place. And so that was really fun. I think I'm going to do that this year too. Because Tomb Raider 4, 5, and 6 are coming out on Valentine's Day too. So I'm just super excited about it. But Tomb Raider 2 was awesome. I owned Tomb Raider 2. That was the Tomb Raider that I started with. My friend, my best friend when we were kids, when Tomb Raider 1 came out on the PlayStation, he showed it to me and I was like, oh, that's cool. But I didn't own a PlayStation. But I did own a PC. And when Tomb Raider 2 came out on PC the next year, that's when I jumped into the Tomb Raider franchise, and I had a blast with it. I loved it. So I played through Tomb Raider 2, and I went, okay, yeah, I remember this level. I remember Venice. I remember the boats. I remember, the Great Wall of China at the very beginning and all the spike pits and the rolling balls and all that. Like, I totally remember Tomb Raider 2 and the swimming. Oh my gosh, the swimming. There was a stream that we did in Tomb Raider 2 when you go into the sunken ship, and oh my gosh, I got stuck for about 3 hours on one stupid puzzle. And it was because I didn't realize that there were 2 ladders next to each other that had like little porthole openings that you climb up. And I kept going through one of them and I didn't see the other one that was right next to it. And so I went around for hours and hours just going, why can't I get out of this area? And I actually had to look it up online afterwards. And I stopped the stream. I went and looked it up, came back the afternoon or evening stream, and then went, okay, fine, let's do this. Let's continue on. But I had a blast with it. Then we did Skyblazer, and this was another viewer request. I want to do a lot more viewer request streams. That's a lot of fun for me to play games that are outside my wheelhouse that other people like you guys grew up with that I never played or I know a little bit about. Viewer request streams are super fun. So I played Skyblazer, and it was basically a spiritual successor on the Super Nintendo to the game Hook, which was a movie game. The one with Robin Williams playing Peter Pan. Yeah, that is a video game called Hook on the Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis. The Super Nintendo one is totally different, and the Super Nintendo one had a spiritual successor called Skyblazer, and I played that, and that was a lot of fun too. Then I beat Tomb Raider 3, and that took me a while. That took me 30 hours to beat, and that was kind of near the end of March. 30 hours is a lot to dump into one game in a single month, playing a bunch of others. And that's when work kind of got in the way again. That's when work kind of picked up for me, because January and February are always the slow months. December, January, and February are the slow months for my work. And so that's why I was able to do 2 streams a day. But then work picked up, and it took me a lot longer to finish Tomb Raider 3, and then that's where I went. Then this is where I started playing VR. I played Hellblade. Senua's Sacrifice, I think, is the subtitle. Hellblade, oh my gosh, is crazy. That was a 2017 title, some of the best graphics out there. But they had a dedicated VR version for it, and it's really, really good. I freaking loved it. The audio design in that game is super cool too, because you got like these voices, talking at you the entire time in your ears. It's about a lot of mental illness and schizophrenia and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting game. Then the sequel came out. And it was interesting too, because this is a brand new game that came out. It was on Game Pass, and it was such a letdown. Hellblade 2 is such a downer letdown compared to Hellblade 1. Hellblade 1 was like this. I don't like using the word masterpiece for games. I think that is a very special term that most games do not deserve. And people throw that around like it's nothing nowadays. I saw at least 10 different games just today on X posts that were like, this game's a masterpiece. This game's a masterpiece. I'm like, dude, I wouldn't put that in my top 500 games. You don't know what a masterpiece means. So Hellblade 2 is one that I would say in certain cases you can make the argument for, because it's really, 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 really well done. It's art. That's really what it is. It's art. Hellblade 2, they got too comfortable with being art, and they got a lot more money, and they kind of just made something that just did not feel like it flowed together well at all. It's very watered down experience, completely, barely touchable. Like I don't like when people call games walking simulators, because it's very derogatory, but it almost is in this case. Hellblade 2 is really like, there's very little combat. The combat that is there is very, very simplistic. And I just did not like it at all. I couldn't stand it. I thought it was like such a waste of time. So I beat Hellblade 1, then played Hellblade 2 and beat that. And then MudRunner VR, which was a really interesting one too, because that also did really good for my YouTube channel. That was the first time I actually got views on YouTube was with MudRunner. So MudRunner is one of my favorite series, the Spintires series. It first came out with Spintires, and then the sequel was called MudRunner, and kind of basically added a few extra things, nuts and bolts, make it, a little bit more, less of a tech demo and more of an actual video game. And then they hit their stride with SnowRunner back in 2020. That's when I fell in love with the series, because it's basically 4-wheel drive cars and trucks, big, massive, like tanker trucks, getting stuck in the mud and snow and you just grappling your way out. That's all it is. That's pretty much the game. You're hauling things from point A to point B and you're getting stuck in the mud and having to get yourself out. So they came out with Spin Tires and then Mud Runner, then Snow Runner, and then Mud Runner VR. Mud Runner VR is interesting because I thought it was just going to be Mud Runner, I think it was like 2016, maybe when that came out. The 2016 game just in VR. But it's not. It's a totally brand new game, and I had a blast playing it. It was so much fun. And like I said, it did really well on the YouTube channel too, which was super cool. So in the course of doing these, like I said, there was a viewer that wanted me to play Ape Escape. And when I did, we were going to do Ape Escape 2 right afterwards. And we did. But he was the only one kind of championing me to play those games. And so I said, look, dude, I will not play Ape Escape 2 without you. But then he had some life stuff happen, and it was kind of a bummer because I kept waiting around for him to show up so that we could continue on with playing Ape Escape 2. Then I just kind of made the executive decision that I'm going to continue on with this game because I have it in my backlog. I have it half played. I played it on stream a few times, and I just want to get it done and have it on my beaten list, right? So I played through Ape Escape 2. Then I played through Bushido Blade 1 and 2 on stream for whatever reason. I can't remember why or how, but Bushido Blade's a really weird, interesting game, and I covered it on the Retrocember 2023 videos because it's a PlayStation series. And it's a really interesting fighting game where if you get hit with a weapon, like a sword, on the arm, you no longer have the use of your arm. Your arm doesn't get lopped off, unfortunately. There's no dismemberment. But if you get hit in the arm with a sword, you ain't using that arm anymore. And so, like, you're limping along if you get hit in the leg and stuff. It's really, really cool. And then, oh boy, oh man, I'm so excited to talk about this. Then we got into some old retro VR games. I'm, of course, talking about Doom. We played Doom on this channel, like the series. We played through the series of Doom so much on this channel. It was so much fun. Oh my gosh, I'm just giddy about talking about this. Okay, so there's this team called Team Beef, and basically what they do is they port old video games to VR, and they ported Doom to VR. And I was like, man, I grew up in a Christian home, and Doom was not allowed to be played in the house. Doom, you go to hell, right? And so my parents were never wanting me to or allowing me to play Doom as a kid. Same thing with Duke Nukem, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm an adult now. And I can play Doom without being weirded out and stuff. So I sat down and played Doom in VR, and oh my gosh, that was so much fun. I finally understand why people like Doom, because I never got it. Whenever people would talk about Doom like this super reverent thing, I was just like, why? It's not that great. Like, I'll play Wolfenstein 3D all day long, and I think that's a great game, but Doom, whatever. It's just a bunch of monsters, and I'm not a big fan of monsters. So I sat down and I played through Doom, and man, I get it now. And it got me so amped up that I was like, we're playing through all the Dooms in VR that we can. So we played through Doom and then played Doom 2, and that was super fun. And then I switched gears, and instead of going to Doom 3, played Doom 64 in VR. Doom 64, like Doom 1 and 2 are action games, full-on blown action games. Doom 64 is like a survival horror game. There's no action, guitar riff music, heavy metal music, things aren't like exploding all the time. It's not crazy, blood splattering everywhere. It's terrifying. It is dark and dreary, upsetting, and just a totally different lighting that they use to bake all the lighting into the game. It's really, really interesting, but it very much doesn't feel like Doom in a certain aspect. However, I will say the monsters look rad in Doom 64 because they do this weird claymation pre-rendering stuff, and it's just fantastic. I loved it. So played through Doom, then Doom 2, then Doom 64, and then we went to Duke Nukem 3D. And boy, oh boy, hello, ladies. Boy, let's get groovy. This is stuff like that. Sorry, I was like, shoot, what do I talk about in Duke? So we played through Duke Nukem 3D, and that's where I started doing a lot of the let's talk like Duke Nukem channel redemption points. So I did a lot of videos in streams where viewers would request or use channel points. When you watch the stream, you accrue points, and you get to use those points and on goofy stuff that I put. So I always had a point redemption of Dukeify my message or Dukeify a movie quote. And so I would do a Duke Nukem, impression of whatever that person put is in the chat, or a movie quote of some sort. And, obviously Duke Nukem quotes are movie quotes to begin with. Groovy, and I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum, stuff like that, right? Damn, those alien bastards are going to pay for beating up my ride. So I had a lot of fun with Duke Nukem 3D. And I will say, I never beat Duke Nukem 3D. I wasn't allowed to own that as well. He swore. And it was really fun being able to play through that game and understand, Duke Nukem is totally on a different wavelength than Doom. They're very similar games, but they are totally different at the same time. Doom is very linear. It's you need to get here and get this key to open up this area, to get that key to open up that area, and then you end the level. Duke Nukem is a story, and its progression of the levels is not only horizontal, but it's also vertical. And I thought that was super cool. So I had a really fun time with that. So once I beat Duke Nukem 3D, I was like, man, I'm still getting that VR itch. We just did so much VR this year. It was incredible. There's a game that I did not beat on stream that we played probably at least 60 hours of. Fallout 4. The TV show came out, produced by Amazon. And man, that took the world by storm for a good week or two. And oh man, it was so much fun. I got my wife to watch it, and my wife actually really liked the show too. And I was actually impressed because I was like, it's a video game show. She's probably not going to be super into it, but she got really into it. And then I was like, well, I want to finish Fallout 4 in VR, because Fallout 4 in VR is one of my go-tos for showing people why VR is awesome. I literally have a YouTube video called Why VR is Awesome, and Fallout 4 is one of the examples. It's one of the prime examples, because you could put your gun through a hole in the wall, turn 90 degrees, and shoot past the wall and kill people. And it's just like, you cannot do that in a normal, regular, flat video game. Only in VR. So I had that VR itch, and I wanted to play more VR games. And I think at that point, I put Fallout 4 down in VR for a while. I was having a lot of crashing issues with the mods that I was playing and stuff like that. So I found a game that was on Game Pass called Warhammer 40K Bolt Gun. I always call it Gun Bolt for whatever reason. I can't remember, but it's called Bolt Gun. And this is a Doom 64 style looking video game, but it's way more action based. So it's more in the vein of Doom, but it's got that pre-rendered, caricature type of art style to it. And I just had a blast with it. It's so much fun. Oh my gosh. It was so fun to play Bolt Gun. It is hardcore though. That was one of the most difficult video games that I've ever played. There was definitely like a 45-minute sections that I got stuck on because I just got in this room with these enemies just bombarding me over and over and over again. It was crazy nuts. Then after I beat Bolt Gun, I did a multiplayer madness stream. Here on the channel, we do multiplayer madness where basically I will, do a multiplayer game with the community. And we were doing good for a while, and then a lot of people dropped off and kind of had to put it on hiatus for a while. But there was one that actually was really, really fun, and it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. This game came out a couple years ago, and I remember I actually got my best friends to play it together online. We all live in different parts of the country, and we all have different lives at this point. So we talk every day. We talk every day in our group chat, and we stay connected. We've been best friends since high school. But it's really interesting because we don't play online games, but we do for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because we have a lot of good memories. And so that was really fun. And we had multiplayer madness where a lot of people from outside of the Game or Die community came in because they just saw me playing it and decided to jump in and help out because it's drop in, drop out multiplayer online gaming. And it was a blast. Then I finished Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster, which, oh boy, Jackie Chan's Stuntmaster is a game that I did not expect to be that good. It is a really fun game, and they need to either remake it, which I'm not a big fan of remakes, but re-release it would be a better term. I want that game re-released so that more people can play it. And I want a sequel. Oh my gosh, we need a Jackie Chan Stuntmaster 2. Before Jackie Chan passes away, because he's getting old, man. He's not able to do the stuff. And what's really fun, too, about Stuntmaster is he does the voice acting for it. Not only does he do the voice acting, but he did all the motion capture for it, too. And then at the very end, when you beat the game, the bloopers are all of the video game character Jackie Chan doing bloopers. And it's just really, really fun and interesting. Oh, my gosh, it's so good. So, oh man, there's still a lot here. Let's kind of go through this because I do want to get to the top 10 list as well, because this is already going a little bit longer than I thought it was going to. Then we did another retro game night where I beat a couple arcade games. I beat Night Slashers and then Metal Slug, the original on Neo Geo. And then another time I beat the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade game. So that was the second time on stream. Then I played and beat the Simpsons arcade, another arcade cabinet that I owned. Then Metal Slug 2. And then we got to July. And in July, I made the game of the month because we do game of the month. Every month, there's a new game that I want to showcase and play through. For July, it was The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This is another one that got a lot of people into the channel. A lot of people love Zelda. A lot of people love Nintendo. And myself included, I love Zelda. It's one of my favorite series of all time. My wife and I loved playing through Breath of the Wild. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. When the sequel came out, Tears of the Kingdom, we played it like nonstop for like a week. But then some life stuff happened. My wife had to leave to California for some family stuff, and she was gone for a while. When she came back, I had to leave for California for some work stuff. So I was gone for a while. And by the time like our schedules resynced up and we were both back at home, everyone kind of moved on from Zelda. You know, people started kind of having a little bit of a backlash because they said it was DLC and not a full game and all this stupid, dumb stuff. But Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is phenomenal. I cannot believe people have backlash on that game for the sheer fact that they didn't finish it. That's why. Because if you finish Tears of the Kingdom, there is no way that you can have the heart to tell me that it is not a good game. The ending to Tears of the Kingdom is so good. It is top 10 endings of all time in video games, easily for me. Easily. It's probably top 3, if not top. It was maybe not top. Maybe not top. Maybe 2. I would say top 2. I don't want to rank game endings here or anything like that, but it's so phenomenally well. So basically, and here's a little bit of a spoiler for a 1.5 year old game. Tears of the Kingdom picks up where Breath of the Wild left off, where you defeat Calamity Ganon, and Hyrule is, now prosperous, and everyone's trying to kind of get back to normal. Something happens where Ganon starts getting restored again, and Zelda gets teleported back in time. And so the entire game, you have no idea where Zelda is, and you're trying to figure out, and you, the player, understand through cutscenes, oh, she's back in time. And it's so interesting to how it all culminates into the final boss fight with Ganon, which, again, another really awesome boss fight that I enjoyed, that I had one of the coolest moments in video game, in all of my video game playing over the last 37 years of my life. I've been gaming since 1988. This year had one of the coolest moments of video game history in my life happen with that boss fight, where I'm going and I'm doing my super flurry rush mode. That's all in slow motion. And then he counters it, and he being Ganon. And then he does his super one and I counter it. And then I go back again and he counters it. And then I counter his counter. It just went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then I got a quarter of a heart, literally the last sliver of health that Link can have in that game, I've got going on, and I deal the final blow, and cutscene happens, and I'm just blown away the fact that I got away with it. And it was just so cool. Then the game doesn't end. Then you have the final boss fight where you are in the sky skydiving, and Ganon has turned into this giant flying dragon, but Zelda's also a flying dragon, and they're dueling, and Zelda's picking Link up and dropping him on Ganon, and it's just this unbelievably, and I don't use the word lightly, epic. It is epic in nature. It is so stupidly stinking cool that this is how this game works, that I was blown away by it. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. So then the ending as well. The ending is, I can't even describe how good the ending is. The ending for Tears of the Kingdom brought me to tears, basically. I teared up. And I'm not ashamed to admit it. It's so stupidly good. Oh, man. So we played through Tears of the Kingdom, and that took 60 plus hours. I lost track of the hour count, unfortunately. I did pick that game up in the middle of the fire dungeon because my wife and I played it. And then our schedules got so out of sync that we never finished it. My wife was the one who suggested playing it for Game of the Month. So I was halfway in through that game by the time I picked it up for Game of the Month, and then I was able to finish. That was awesome. Then we went and played Quake and Quake 2. Did I count Quake earlier? No, I didn't. Oh, I'm missing a game. I got to add this really quick to the list. 1 second here. So I played through Quake in VR, which I've never done as well. That was really interesting because I played Quake a ton when I was a kid. I played it in high school, and things like that. It was so awesome that I was able to play that game and beat it in VR. And I never thought I was going to be able to do that. VR is so incredible. I'm telling you guys, you need to get a VR headset. You need to experience these games in a way that you've never experienced them before. You think Doom is cool? You've never seen it like in VR. It takes it to a whole nother level. And that's Doom, like the original 1992 or 93 Doom, or Quake. So I finished Quake, then I finished Quake 2. And then I started going, I want to play some Sonic games again. But I wanted to play these Sonic Advance games on the Game Boy. So I played Sonic Advance, and then I got really hit with some really difficult level design in that game, the point where I rage quitted because I got stuck. I got super stuck and I just couldn't finish this. So I beat 1, but I never beat Sonic Advance 2 or 3. Then I did Quake 3 Arena, which is kind of a multiplayer game, so there's no real story mode, but there is a level single player progression. So I did that, and that was really fun. Then I beat Star Wars Dark Forces, which was a remaster that came out earlier this year that I played it and streamed it in February, right before Tomb Raider came out. But then Tomb Raider came out and I kind of forgot about it. So I made it Game of the Month for August. And the reason why is because August was the month that we moved. In the middle of the year, like in late June, I believe, late June, maybe mid-June, let's say mid-June, my wife and I decided that we wanted to move. And so we found a house that met everything that we wanted. And so we pursued that and we got the house and we were going to move. So in August, we knew we were moving. I needed to have a game that was going to be a little bit easier to play and finish so that I wasn't super stressed out during the moving process. Going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm missing Game of the Month. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't finish Game of the Month. So I picked Star Wars Dark Forces, which is another, 90s style. They call it boomer shooter, which I think is a stupid term, but it's that first person shooter from the 90s. That we all know and love. And it was an old school Star Wars game, but with a Doom overlay basically on it. Or basically it was Doom with a Star Wars overlay on it. They remastered it. It's by Night Dive Studios. It's awesome, phenomenal. I love it. It's great. Play it. So I beat that. Then I didn't really play anything for a few weeks because we were in the middle of moving. And we had a really, really, really tough move. This is where the channel started to really slow down. This is where I started to slow down streaming. I didn't stream for a week and a half, to almost 2 weeks straight. I was streaming literally every day, some cases multiple times per day, from January 1st to before January 1st. It was like December 29th, I believe, to the middle of or late August. And then I took like 2 weeks off almost. And that was really weird because like I've built up this habit of just streaming every day, every night, every day, every night. So when I came back, I was in a temporary studio. The reason why is because I had a studio built in our basement area in the old house. This new house has a separate building where I'm recording this right now. This is my new studio I'm in. But this has taken a long time to get up and running. And we just moved and we had a very, very difficult move. One of the most stressful times in my entire life. Thank God. God is so awesome that he protected us, kept us safe, and, just exceeded all of our expectations of that move. It was amazing to see him, take care of us and we didn't have to worry about it. Like, it was incredible. I learned so much through that process, but I did not have a place to stream from. So I built a little tiny temporary studio with a little desk and my microphone and my mixer setup and all my computers and monitors and all that type of stuff and stream decks in this guest room that we have. And that's where I streamed for a couple months. A very temporary, and because of work too, because I do this for work as well. So I was like, man, shoot, what am I going to do? And so I did Soul Calibur, like we did a Dreamcast celebration stream right around my birthday. On September 9th, 1999 is when the Dreamcast came out. And so for the Dreamcast's anniversary, I did a Dreamcast stream, and I beat a few games on stream that night. Soul Calibur 1 and 2. That was really fun. Those are super fun fighting games that I'm not good at fighting games, but I really like them in certain cases. So I was able to beat those. And then in October, I was able to play and beat Iron Meat. Iron Meat is a really interesting one. Iron Meat is like a new game from Retroware. Retroware is taking a lot of big swings lately. They're coming up with games that are similar to games that we grew up with and love, but not exactly. Iron Meat is basically like a modern new Contra. That's how it basically is. And it's a really, really fun and fairly easy too. I was able to beat that game in how many hours? 4 hours roughly. Like that's pretty cool. In 2 streams, I was able to beat that. And then I went, oh, you know what? It's October. It's kind of spooky month and all that. Let's play some scary games. So I finished, I played through and beat Doom 3 in VR as well. So we got Doom 1, Doom 2, Doom 64, and Doom 3, 4 Doom games, all in VR, played through level by level and beat this year. How crazy cool is that? Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. Doom 3 is very different though. Doom 3 is so unbelievably different. It barely is a Doom game. It's a survival horror game with a little bit of action, but it's survival horror more than anything else. Then I got through and was able to play the DLC for Alan Wake. Alan Wake 2. Oh my gosh, I don't think I talked about that either. Did I? I think I skipped some stuff, man. Yeah, I didn't count it earlier, but Alan Wake 2 came out and they did a DLC pack this year. There's 2 of them. Night Springs and the Lake House. The Lake House was the second one, and it was really bad. I hated it. I honestly hated it. There's a couple reasons why I hate it. Number one, I just didn't think it was good. You, again, don't play as Alan Wake in Alan Wake the game. And I really, really am tired of that. Number 2, there's a big issue with the DEI stuff in that game. Again, gender swapped characters or race swapped characters. Why am I playing as this FBI chick when I want to play as Alan Wake? You know, there's a lot of things that I'm not happy about with the DLC of Alan Wake, The Lake House. But I want to go on record saying the Night Springs DLC is phenomenal. That was the first one. It was announced at the Summer Games Fest, and then the next day it came out, and we played that on stream. I beat it, and oh my gosh, it's so much fun. Night Springs is like the Twilight Zone TV show equivalent for Alan Wake. And basically it's 3 episodes of Night Springs in that DLC. Number 1, you play as Alice the waitress, and it is so stinking good. It is so awesome to be able to play as Alice, who's this weird character in Alan Wake, and you basically like deal all these shotgun stuff. Like you shoot a motorcycle that is possessed. Like it's crazy nuts. The second one, you take control of, Jesse Faden from Control. Because what Remedy, the developers, do is they've created a multiverse. And yeah, I know we're all kind of sick of multiverses in media, but the quote-unquote Remedyverse takes Control, Alan Wake, and their, Quantum Break. and combines all of those games into its own universe and multiverse, and it's all intertwined, and it's really well written. So I highly suggest that. I'm seeing a lot of the chatters. Hey, what's up, guys? Sorry, I have not been talking with the chatters and stuff because I'm doing and recording the podcast. But yes, Happy New Year, everyone. David Kelly, Shadow Wizard, Roxanne, Merry Happy New Year. We are going through all the games that I've been playing and having a lot of fun with this year. So I'm talking about Alan Wake 2, the DLC. The first one, Night Springs, number 1, you play as Alice the waitress. That was super fun. Number 2, you play Jesse Faden, who's in Control, the game. And Control 2 is going to come out at some point soon. And so they're starting to interweave their other characters from other games into the Alan Wake universe. And it's really fun. And then the third one, you play as Tim Breaker. Tim Breaker is like a kind of Nas/side character / weird thing from the Quantum Break video game. And they tie him in. And I was like, Alice is going to be my favorite DLC because she was so interesting and so fun and so quirky and weird. She was like quirky girl. And I was like, she's going to be my girl. And then Tim Breaker just blows it out of the water. Like his DLC portion, his episode was so fun and so interesting because they do all these weird art styles and things like that. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. I love it. I really hope that people play that DLC because the Lake House DLC was just so underwhelming when we got that high of the Night Springs DLC earlier in the year. So that's the Lake House. Then in October, for our October game of the month, I had Condemned Criminal Origins, but I was back and forth between Condemned and Alien Isolation. If you don't know, Alien Isolation, there was a mod made for that game for VR because the game actually was intended to have VR natively inputted into it. For whatever reason, Sega at the last moment removed the VR component. Some dude created a VR mod, and we've been playing it for years, but I never finished it. And so I was like, I want to finish Alien Isolation. And so we played Alien Isolation in VR, and oh my gosh, that was so much fun. Yeah, positive energy going into the new year, talking about all the fun games that I've played over the course of this year on stream. And then afterwards, after I'm done recapping everything and I'm getting pretty close to the end of the year, we're going into actual top 10 game of the year after this. So stay tuned. You got 30 more minutes. Yeah. Yeah, it's 1:30 here. So yeah, we've been in the new year for a while now. So after I did Alien Isolation and beat that, which phenomenal, by the way, that's another video that I did. Why VR is awesome on the YouTube channel. That is also another standout little selection that I put about talking about Alien Isolation. So go again, check that out if you haven't. After that, I played G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but for right now, just to kind of recap what it is, it's a retro beat 'em up, or brawler as I like to call them. And it's all about G.I. Joe. Yo, Joe, right? Oh man, I love G.I. Joe. We'll talk more about it in a little bit, but then I beat that. And then right before October was done, I was able to finally finish the game of the month for October, which was Condemned Criminal Origins. I remember Condemned was being insane. I was so scared of that game when it originally came out. It was a launch 360 game. So back in 2005, that game came out. And for the Xbox 360, one of their mandates originally was that every game had to have a demo. So there was a demo for Condemned Criminal Origins, and I played it because I wanted to play everything on the Xbox 360 when it came out. But if you know me, I'm a wuss when it comes to scary games. I just don't like scary games. I've never liked them. But Condemned Criminal Origins was more about a serial killer than like monsters and all that stuff from what I knew. And so it always intrigued me, but I never finished it or never played more than the demo. So I made a game of the month and I was able to finish it. And I'm really interested to play 2 because I know 2 goes nuts with some of that stuff. But oh my gosh, it is really weird because I loved the serial killer stuff. Like you're a detective, you're an FBI agent, and you're like trying to solve, and you're using all these weird FBI tools to solve a crime and kind of put like crime scenes together. But then it goes off into this weird supernatural direction. Is when it did that, I just didn't care about it. I wasn't having fun at that point. I was just like, I want to finish this game. So right before Halloween, we were able to finish Condemned Criminal Origins. That was really fun. And then in November, I started building this studio. So I moved everything out of the temporary studio right at the end of October, early November, and started building the studio, building these walls and everything. This was just literally 4 walls and a roof. And then I built other walls and stud walls and drywalled and insulation and all that stuff, lights, electrical. I've been doing it all over the past 2 months and it's still not done. This is still very, very, very temporary, but we're going to get there. It's just going to take a while. It's going to take a lot longer than I thought it was going to because I've got some different ideas. Now that I'm in the space and I've been streaming for about a month and a half here, I got some different ideas of what I want to do with this space. So I'm going to change it up a little bit. So you'll see some changes happen in 2025 for sure. What's up, Wolfman? Happy New Year to you too. And so I didn't get to stream a lot for the first part of November. And then kind of near the end, right before Thanksgiving, I was able to finish and play a few games. Trombone Champ was one of them. Trombone Champ I did a game review for because I got that game early. I was a tester for that. And that was really fun. Trombone Champ is a flat, regular computer game where you play this trombone and it's a rhythm game, right? Like Rock Band or Guitar Hero, but you play a trombone. And it's really goofy. Like it's meant to be very unserious. But then they made a VR port. And the reason why is because the studio, newly founded studio this year, Flat 2 VR, is this studio that is taking flat regular games and converting them into VR. And oh my gosh, it is so stinking cool. I highly recommend people check those out if you're into VR because the Flat 2 VR studio is doing some amazing stuff. This was their first game that they published and they knocked it out of the park. It is really, really well done because they take that Flat 2 VR, they take Trombone Champ and they just put it in virtual reality and then add on top of everything. It is so much more mechanic driven and there's so much more unlockables and all this other extra stuff. It's really, really cool. So highly check that out. I'm sad to say that the other game that I was playing, Ember Souls, was not finished. I did not get to finish that game. And oh man, I'm bummed about that. I'm near the end. I could probably sit and finish it tonight if I wanted to. That's how close I think I am to the end. But it's just something I wasn't able to finish. So it's not on the list of games beaten. But yeah. However, I did finish earlier this month. I did finish Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle is unbelievable. We'll talk more about it in a little bit, but oh man, it exceeded my expectations, which were tempered, but high-tempered expectations, and it blew it up. It exceeded it so vastly that it was like, wow, they did some good stuff here, like unbelievably good stuff. So yeah, Highly recommend checking out Indiana Jones and the Great Circle if you haven't. It's on Game Pass, so it's like kind of like free. Or the way that I say when you're dealing with Game Pass is the new Blockbuster. How simple is that, right? We all understand Blockbuster. We rent a game for, what was it, 5 days? I can't remember. Was it 3 days or 5 days, or they started changing it up? But Blockbuster was a video game rental store back in the 90s and early 2000s. And you would be able to rent something from the store, and then after X amount of days, you would bring it back. Now, you are basically renting games from Microsoft with Game Pass for a month instead of 5 days. And instead of $5, it's, like 15 or $20, depending on what tier you want. But that's really it. It's so good. I highly recommend getting Game Pass. We're getting down to the very end here. We just got 3 more. Star Fox 64, I did beat again. And the reason why, like I said earlier this evening, is Star Fox 64, I covered for RetroSember a few days ago. And so when I recorded that video, I was having such a good time playing Star Fox that I didn't want to stop. And then I ended up beating it because it's like an hour long. It's not that hard. One of the last games that I finished this year, number 65, Batman Arkham Shadow. It's a VR game. It's VR exclusive to the Meta Quest 3, which is kind of interesting. Number one, the Arkham Batman games are Rocksteady, right? We all know that Batman Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Knight are Rocksteady developed. And that is a trilogy. We are not counting Batman Arkham Origins because that was Ubisoft or Warner Brothers Montreal. And they were basically tasked with creating a stopgap game between Arkham City and Arkham Knight that Rocksteady was doing. And in between that, they shoved this Arkham Origins game out the door and created Series Fatigue. And they created Series Fatigue for the Arkham games. And by Origins existing, a lot of people didn't try Arkham Knight, which is a infinitely better game because Rocksteady said, no, the Arkham games are a trilogy. Ours. Arkham Asylum, City, and Knight. Ridiculous. So after that, it was really interesting because Batman Arkham Shadow is not made by Rocksteady. Rocksteady put out Suicide Squad last year and it failed so miserably they're shutting it down because it's a live service game and those suck. And Rocksteady sucks now too because like the actual, creators of Rocksteady said, we're bouncing, and they left and formed their own new studio. So we don't talk about new Rocksteady, only old Rocksteady from 2015 and from 2009 to 2015, Rocksteady. Yeah. Anyways, Batman Arkham Shadow, exclusive to not only VR, but exclusive to the Meta Quest headset. What a bizarre choice. I'm sure it'll come to PC VR or PlayStation VR, or at least some other headsets at some point. There's no way that they're going to lock down Batman to only that. But man, did they do a phenomenal job. Not only does the graphics really look good for a standalone headset, because it's all running on the headset. Nothing is running on a powerful computer. It's all only on the headset. They did a really good job with that game. They took the Arkham universe and built it out. A lot of stuff flows fairly well within the universe from what I remember. I haven't played the Arkham games in a long time. Maybe we'll finish them or play them in 2025. So, Batman Arkham Shadow takes place in between Origins and Asylum. Origins, which I don't really count, is the start of Batman's career. So it's a early year one type of Batman story. Arkham Asylum is when Batman's like way older. He's, beaten all these criminals and all that stuff. And, he's got Arkham Asylum kind of locked down. Arkham Shadow is in between those two time periods. So he's still fairly young. Batgirl and Robin haven't happened. And they do tie in Arkham Origins to the Arkham Shadow game. I'm not a big fan of that, but whatever. They talk about some of the boss fights, like the electrocutioner, and you get the gloves again. You have a scene with Joker as well, and just a bunch of other stuff. Like it's kind of interesting, but I kind of winced originally, but then I kind of let my guard down and went, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. Then so I finished that just a few nights ago. I finished it on Christmas. That's what it was. Yeah, that was like my Christmas gift to myself, was finishing Batman Arkham Shadow. And we'll talk about it in the Game of the Year section, all right? And then the last game that I finished and beat, number 66, games that I beat this year. I beat 65 on stream. That is phenomenal. Every single game that I played this year, except for this last one, I played exclusively on stream and beat it 100%. That I don't know anyone else that streams that beat that many games on stream this year. Maybe one. Maybe one, and it's his literal job. He's a full-time streamer. I'm not. I would love to be. Please, please, please allow me to be. But Subside is another VR game that I just finished 2 nights ago. And the reason why I didn't stream this game is because, number one, I've been sick over the last couple of days, and that's just kind of killed a lot of my momentum for trying to get Game of the Year ready and all that stuff. And it's been a bummer. I got sick twice this month at the end of the year. Like, what a crappy bummer. But Subside is a snorkeling / scuba diving underwater exploration game. The graphics are phenomenal, and since I was sick and I couldn't be in the studio, it's freezing. It's like, I think it's 20 degrees outside. Like, it's freezing. And I'm sitting here trying to stay warm, talking about video games even now, and I'm still sick. So Subside is basically a game that you are underwater and you like swim throughout the game, and you just kind of collect little collectibles and explore. The other reason I didn't stream this game, I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought here. The reason why I didn't stream it is because I wanted to be in that alone, present state. I wanted to feel excluded from the world. Just block out the world, block out everything that's going on, block out the sickness, block out the distractions, and immerse myself into this game world that I've been waiting for several months. Because I downloaded the demo and I played the demo for like 5 minutes, and I was like, I'm sold on this game. This is basically like a realistic Subnautica. And again, Subnautica is another VR game that I talk about in that Why VR is Awesome video. And it's that alone feeling in an alien world that is both terrifying yet exhilarating at the same time. Subside is like that too. So I highly suggest checking it out. If you like VR, check out Subside, Subside. It is realistic scuba diving. And there's several worlds or levels in that. And there's 2 levels that are locked off exclusively so that you have to get the collectibles of whales and sharks and their encounters. You have a shark encounter where you're in a shark cage, and a whale encounter where you're in the free ocean swimming alongside whales. And the scope with VR and all that, it's so cool. Anyways, so that is all of the games that I beat this year, 66 of them. I think I might have 67. I might have missed 1 or 2, but unfortunately, I'm just we're sticking with 66, unless I come back tomorrow and go, shoot, I forgot about that one. But yeah, how crazy is that? 66 games that I streamed and played through 100% on stream in front of this camera with you guys. And before we get to the game of the year stuff, let me say thank you. Thank you for everyone who watches. Thank you for everyone who subscribes on Twitch. That is the only way that I make money off of these streams, and I don't make any. So if you want to help me out and encourage me, I'd be more than grateful. But honestly, just you being here and watching the stuff that I do and hanging out with me and talking with me. And I know I'm kind of not doing the whole chat thing tonight because it's a podcast, but I thoroughly enjoy talking with you guys. I have so much fun having gaming conversations or even just life conversations. We had some pretty crappy things happen this year. One of my dogs passed away from cancer. That was really hard on me. And I had some viewers, come alongside me and say, hey, I had this happen or that happen. And we kind of were able to commiserate a little bit. We were able to, just kind of talk through some stuff. Real life stuff I'm always iffy on with streamers, but for me, because I am a Christian and I am I try to show Christ in my streams. That's why I don't swear. That's why I don't cuss or anything like that, or get vulgar. It's because that's not me, and that's not what I want to do, and that's not what I want to showcase on these streams. So when I do have other people come alongside me and help me through a hard time that I can help them through a hard time too, I think that's pretty cool. And I think that's one of the things that I love about streaming is showing Christ's love in these streams and saying, hey, it's okay. We're all different. We're all coming from different backgrounds and life experiences. And hopefully I can be that space where people can come and just kind of forget their worries at the door sometimes, right? I think we all need that in this world, especially lately. So that's kind of my goal for this next year is to, provide more of a fun place that you can just enjoy streams where you don't have to think about the crappy things that happened throughout the day, that you can just laugh. And we're going to be doing some really fun stuff once this studio is fully built. And I'm looking at some of the stuff right now. And I'm just going, I cannot wait to implement this. It's off to the side. It's not on camera, but I cannot wait. It's just, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen first before I implement it properly, because I want to do it proper. That's the thing. I hate it about myself that I'm a perfectionist, but it's one thing that I do think sets me apart from a lot of other people. I don't like when things go wrong. I don't like showing behind the scenes stuff that is not supposed to be seen in a normal environment. I come from a film production background. That's what I went to college for, film production. And so when I see a lot of people just going, whatever, I'm going to just stream from my bed, and I'm going to eat on stream and stuff like that. It's just, I don't want anything to do with that. That's not entertainment. That's just living your life in front of a camera. And that's not what I'm about. So yeah, you lost your dog too. Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. Yeah. Parvo. Ooh, that's a bad one too. Yeah. So, I mean, we all have those things. And again, that's why I want to have such a fun, enjoyable environment for these streams. And again, if you do subscribe on Twitch or use that Prime subscription, which is free, or hopefully I can hit more subscribers on YouTube. YouTube and Twitch is weird. I multi-stream, and Twitch has subscribers, which is a monetary thing. You either get that free Amazon Prime subscription. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription per month. And that actually gives me a chunk of money from that. It's $5 normally, but it's free if you have Amazon Prime. And if you give me that, I get half of that. So I get $2.50. That's how that works. And I don't get any of it. Like I have 2 subscribers. So I've made $5 in the last 4 months. Yeah, that's how that works. But with YouTube has subscribers, which is free. You just click subscribe and then you just, see me in your feed. Once I get 500 subscribers and have other achievements met, then I can get monetized for YouTube. And that's kind of my goal for YouTube this next year, is to get monetized so that I can make money off of YouTube, which will allow me to actually make some super stinking cool, fun stuff. If you check out, it just dropped a little bit ago. If you check out the YouTube channel for Game or Die, you'll see the announcement for the Game of the Month for January. And it's a YouTube short. Check that out. I filmed it 2 days ago. I think I filmed it yesterday. And I had a blast filming it in the backyard of our new property. But yeah, we're doing Game of the Month for January 2025. Check out the video. Anyways, yeah. Oh man, so much fun. Anyways, that's all the games that I beat this year. Now, 2 hours later, we're in Game of the Year, baby. All right, let's do it. What one can we do here?
Perfect.
Okay, yeah, sure. Let's do that. Also, you know what? Since we're kind of going and doing a couple other things, let's have a cheers. A New Year's cheer. I don't drink, but I do have a Diet Coke here. And since we still got 10 games to count down for the Game of the Year, we're going to do a cheers. So I'm going to put on the super fun effect, and we're going to have some fun. So cheers, everyone. If you're on Twitch, pop that cheers channel point redemption. Sorry, I forgot. And Happy New Year, everyone. I hope that worked. I don't have any monitors tonight. So anyways, cheers. Cheers, Shadow Wizard. All right. Okay, let's get into it. Game of the freaking year. Game of the year is something special. And Game of the Year is something that I hold in high regard because video games are my main hobby. I love video games. I've been playing video games since 1988, and I'm never going to stop. It is my main hobby. It's something that I enjoy doing. I owned a video game a video game store for crying out loud, right? So every year, everyone does their top 10. And I've kind of held to the standard of the game has to be released within the year. It has to be a new game. Remasters and remakes are up for debate, but I generally don't like counting them. DLC is also not game of the year. DLC is an expansion or downloadable content for an existing game. Unless that game came out the same year, DLC should never be counted for game of the year, except for very, very small, crazy circumstances. Anyways, those are kind of my caveats or kind of rules for game of the year. What I'm going to do is I'm going to count down the games that I think are the best this year. And there's a big, big asterisk by 2024. I talked about it a little bit earlier tonight, but 2024, when this year started, I said at the beginning of the year, I really don't have high expectations because I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be very disappointed that there are going to be very little AAA games released this year. And the reason why is because 2023 had so many of those big AAA studios release games, and games take so long now to release that we're not getting big AAA games for quite a while from those studios. like the next several years of games are going to be really, really dry. 2025 is no exception. I know some people are like 2025 is stacked, and I'm like, what Kool-Aid are you drinking? There's a couple that might come out. The big one on everyone's mind is Grand Theft Auto 6, which I don't think is going to come out this new year. I do not think Grand Theft Auto 5 or 6 is going to come out in 2025. I think it will come out 2026. For the record, I can be wrong. I hope I am wrong, but I don't believe I will be. Just from the way that Rockstar operates over the past several decades and the way the last decade plus has gone for Rockstar, I think we're waiting for another full year. I think Grand Theft Auto 6 will probably come out in March of 2026. That's my prediction, and I hope I am wrong. I do think there are going to be games like Metroid Prime 4 is supposed to come out in 2025, I believe. There's a couple others too that are kind of like big games, but I'm saying for the majority of 2025, it's going to be pretty rough, like this year. And I equate 2024 to 2014. If you remember, in 2014, it was the year after Xbox One and PS4 launched. And so many studios were trying to wrap their heads around these new consoles. That's when we started getting remasters. We started getting remasters and remakes of games in 2014 and 2015 because all these studios couldn't get on board with the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 way of designing games. The 360 architecture and the PS3 architecture, the cell processor, remember that? Those were so differently designed consoles that the x86 architecture for both Xbox One and PS4 are totally different. They're alien in nature compared to the 360 and PS3. So there was this huge dry period in 2014. And that's what I think we're kind of experiencing right now, is this weird dry period. But I think it's mostly the fact that games are just taking way too long nowadays to come out and develop. I've talked about it before on the podcast, so I don't want to take too long on it. But games are taking 5 to 7 years to create nowadays, when we were getting games every year in a series. And I'm not talking like crapping out a sports game, game or a Call of Duty game. By the way, I had someone like debate me on X yesterday about, well, you wouldn't want like a Call of Duty scenario where they're just making the same Call of Duty game every year. I'm like, they have 3 different studios creating 3 or 4 different studios technically creating Call of Duty games, and they're on a 3-year cycle. So every 3 years, a studio comes out with a new Call of Duty game. It's just they have those 3 different studios, so they kind of leapfrog. So one studio creates one and releases one, and then they go back to the line and they spend 3 years making the next one, and then they release their game, right? It's all that weird stuff. So anyways, all that being said, I think 2024 is going to be very much like 2014, where we're not going to get a lot of big games. But we're going to get a ton of games. It's just a lot smaller games. Indie games have surpassed AAA big budget developers and studios and publishers at this point. There are hundreds of indie games being released on a weekly basis. So much that we can't keep up with. And that's where I started to kind of filter my list down as I played through games this year in 2024. My Game of the Year list seems very different and odd to me compared to every other year. And compared to pretty much other people's Game of the Year lists, a lot of people went with big AAA games, and there was only a handful of them. At the Game Awards, Astrobot, like literally the only PlayStation game that came out this year, or one of the only, won Game of the Year. I didn't play that. Black Myth Wukong is another one that I didn't play. I didn't play any of the Game of the Year nomination games, which is the first time that's ever happened. Like I said, I've been playing games since 1988. Obviously, I was a very young child at that point, but I always stuck with, like, not just the big popular ones, but I always did play the big popular games as well as some of the not so popular games. Now I'm like, dude, I don't want to have anything to do with half of those games, mostly because they just don't interest me for one reason or another. There are some, but not a whole lot. So let's kind of go down my list. Number 1, or at least number 10, we're going in descending order, right? Ascending order. Number 10, G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra. I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan. I love G.I. Joe. I talked about it a ton of times over the course of this last year and a half or so since I've been streaming. But G.I. Joe is interesting because a lot of people just think of either the cartoon, the 80s cartoon, or the action figures, right? We're all familiar with those. Those are childish things. Excuse me a sec. G.I. Joe, the comic book from the 80s, 90s, and continuing on even 2 days ago, when the last comic issue came out, is written by Larry Hama, who is a Vietnam or Korean War veteran. And what he has done is he's written actual war terminology and real life experiences into the G.I. Joe comics. Yes, there was some like tie-in stuff with some of the Eco Warriors and Battle Corps and Star Brigade type stuff, like the toy lines, kind of near the late 90s or mid 90s. But for the most part, if you read G.I. Joe Real American Hero, that comic run is phenomenal. It is so jam-packed with real life terminology of war. A lot of it's a mature read, really. It really is. It's gotten a little bit goofier as time has gone on, especially with this newer. They kind of repicked up. I think they're on issue 312 as of 2 days ago. They just released issue 312. I've read every single issue, by the way, and they're all fantastic because they're all written by Larry Hama. And he does a fantastic job. All that to say is G.I. Joe is actually legitimately super cool. It is not a childish cool. It is a, dude, I am 40 years old and this is awesome cool. Anyways, G.I. Joe's rad, and they released a game about it. And it's in the same vein as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, or the new Power Rangers game that came out that's a brawler. It's really, really cool. Unfortunately, as I played through it twice, unfortunately, the game is a little bit shallow. It has a lot of fan service, which I'm usually not a fan of, but I am a fan of G.I. Joe, and the deep cuts that they put in there, like the level of Springfield, where Springfield is a city that was bought by Cobra, and all Cobra people live in Springfield, and they cannot, or no one knows that everyone is putting on a facade. Like, that's pretty cool. They have references to Zartan's dreadnoughts, and they have a lot of other characters in there that are like, oh wow, those are kind of deep pulls. This is pretty cool. It's awesome. I love it. And I highly encourage anyone who loves G.I. Joe to check the game out. It's on the expensive side for what it is. It's $20, and it's like a 2.5, 3 hour game, but it is a multiplayer brawler game. So you can have people drop in and drop out and all that fun stuff. It's great. If you're a G.I. Joe fan, highly suggest it, recommend it. But Above and Beyond, I highly recommend. And I'm so bummed out. I've been looking for it since we moved. Um, my cousin is a comic book artist, Matt Rice, and he's done a few comics, which is really cool. I was actually in one of them. He did a Kickstarter, and I gave him some money so that he would put me in the comic, which was really fun. Also, check out the Buffy the Vampire. No, it's Angel. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then the spin-off series Angel with David Boreanaz. He did an episode where they do comic books, and the villain is like a comic book guy or whatever. He did all the comic book artwork in that episode. So shout out to my cousin, Matt Rice. Anyways, he drew and made a bunch of t-shirts of G.I. Joe figures a couple of years ago. And I bought one of those t-shirts and it was like super cool. It's Cobra Commander. I have no idea where it is. I'm super bummed. Anyways, I'm sorry. I'm going on so many rabbit trails, but we've been going for 2.5 hours on this podcast, and it's New Year's, right? I get to do what I want. So G.I. Joe Wrath of Cobra, it's a little on the shallow side. There's not much to it after one playthrough. So like the money to like experience level is kind of like what you get out of seeing G.I. Joe characters. I will say if you beat the game once, you'll unlock or you'll accrue enough points to unlock one of two characters. I think it's not Shipwreck. Airstrike, maybe. I can't remember who is the other unlockable character, but my favorite G.I. Joe, Gung Ho. Gung Ho is a U.S. What is he? He's a Navy SEAL. No. Shoot, now I can't remember. I think he's a Navy SEAL, but he's got like a huge, awesome chest tattoo. He wears this cut off, vest. And he's got like a beret on, I think, too. Gung Ho was always like one of my favorite action figure G.I. Joes as a kid. And having him as the unlockable character was awesome because you have Scarlet, Duke. I think it's Duke. It's not Hawk. It might be Hawk. Hawk and Duke are kind of like occupying the same brain space because they both have the same level. Hawk was the original, and then Duke came in after Hawk, like kind of got promoted. But you have Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Roadblock, Rock and Roll, I think might be the other unlockable character. And then Hawk or Duke, I can't remember what. But you have a few characters that you can play as, and it's just really, really fun. Anyways, the next the next game, number 9 of my top 10 games of 2024 is Mud Runner VR. I know that sounds weird because Mud Runner came out in like 2016, right? But 2024 saw the release of Mud Runner VR, a not only VR port, but a VR standalone game in VR of Mud Runner. So it's a totally separate game than regular Mud Runner that came out years ago. It's a VR game that is in the same universe as Mud Runner, but a totally separate brand new game. And I loved it. The YouTube channel, that was the most views that I ever got on any video was the Mud Runner series playthrough, which was like kind of bizarre to me because VR doesn't do very well at all, but I love VR and I will champion VR for the rest of my life. But for whatever reason, people wanted to see me play Mud Runner VR. It was awesome. It was super cool. And it kind of came out of nowhere. I'm kind of bummed. I will go a little behind the scenes because I've been sick over the last couple of weeks. And just life has gotten so hectic and crazy over the last couple of months that I was not able to put together my game of the year, categories like I did last year. I did a bunch of videos last year of like game of the year where I went down my top 10 or top 5 pinball tables, most disappointing game, most anticipated, and all those like super fun game of the year categories. I did not do those this year. I just didn't have time. I barely was able to stream tonight. So I'm kind of bummed about that. VR, like Mud Runner was like my surprise of the year because I did not expect that. And I had so much fun with it. I'm so excited that MudRunner VR even exists. And it's cool too, because like you get in and out of the car, you're shifting and you're using all this gas and you have to manage it very, very easily. It's really cool. If you haven't watched that playthrough, go check it out. It was a lot of fun. I did have a couple crashes on that game because it was standalone at the time. And I was like, not going to wait around for the PC VR version. So I bought the Quest headset standalone version, and it crashed a few times within the first like week of release. I'm sure they've patched it by now. It is also on Steam VR as well. So it's PC VR as well. And I probably will get that tomorrow before the Steam sale ends, just so that I have it. But that was a lot of fun. So that was number 9. Number 8 of my game of the year for 2024 is Helldivers 2. This is an interesting one because I'm not a multiplayer gamer. If you know me at all, I don't play multiplayer games. One of the reasons why is because online play sucks. Like we all know those like kids that just scream obscenities and all that stuff. I'm not about that. I don't want that in my games at all. So I steer clear of multiplayer games for the most part. But every once in a while, there's a multiplayer game that, you know, either speaks to me or like grabs my attention in a weird way. At the very beginning of this year, before like people started watching, one of the first viewers that I got on the channel on Twitch was because I was playing The Finals. The Finals was a big, big deal at the Game Awards last year. It was announced and released. And then for the first month of January of this year, the Finals were like the big game that you played that was multiplayer. And then a few months later, Helldivers 2 came out. And it was really, I don't want to say funny, but it was interesting because I remember when Helldivers 1 came out on the PlayStation. It's a Sony exclusive. And it sucked. It was a terrible game. It was a really weird isometric top-down twin stick shooter. That's what Helldivers 1 is. Helldivers 2 is a behind the back third person multiplayer shooter. Like not even arena shooter, like a team-based shooter. It's really bizarre that they've just completely changed what Helldivers was, and it blew up. I could not escape Helldivers 2 conversations. My best friend in our text group was like, dude, you need to play Helldivers 2. It's so good. We're all playing it. And I was like, oh, you're playing it on the PlayStation. I'm not going to play. I turned on my PlayStation 5 for the first time in a year and a half yesterday. So I was like, yeah, I'm not going to play it on the PlayStation, but I'll play it on the PC, I guess. So I did. And we did some multiplayer madness streams. And that was a really, really fun time. I played single player, but I got, grouped up with a lot of people online. And that was a lot of fun. Super interesting. I would love to go back to it because I did not get enough time in that game. I only played I think 3 or 4 streams of Helldivers 2. And it was something that I was like, oh, I'll come back to. And I just didn't for whatever reason. But it left enough of an impact on me that I really, really did enjoy it. Then number 7 for Game of the Year is Iron Meat. I talked about this earlier. Retroware Studios is a studio that has, or a publisher now. I don't know if they're the studio itself, but they're a publishing branch that takes these ideas of older games and kind of makes new games out of those old ideas. Retroware, so they're kind of borrowing from a lot of retro games. It's interesting too, because I just watched their trailer update for one of their other games that are coming out next year. Or this year now, 2025. Toxic Crusaders. If you know the horror movie, or Toxic Crusader is a horror movie. It's from Tromaverse, Troma Studios, which is made by Lloyd Kaufman. But man, I remember the Toxic Crusaders action figures and cartoon show, but it is a super horror R-rated movie that is based off of. But we had a lot of that in the 80s. We had a RoboCop cartoon series, we had a Police Academy cartoon series, we had a Rambo cartoon series, we had a Terminator, action figures. Like, we had all of these things that were like super R-rated material, but they changed it enough for children to make action figures and cartoons out of. Anyways, they did that with the Toxic Avenger, and they created a line of toys and a cartoon series called the Toxic Crusaders. And they're making a game out of that as well. There was one in the 90s for the NES, but now they're making a new one. And it's in the same vein of G.I. Joe. It's a brawler. But Iron Meat is interesting. Iron Meat is a Contra style game. It is a run-based shooter. Not run-based, sorry. It is a run and gun shooter that is about a lot of weird, gross excuse me. Run-based alien games that they're all goopy and blood and guts and oozing and all this stuff. It's just crazy nuts. I love it. So I played it as kind of a lark. It was a bonus round stream. I was like, dude, Iron Meat kind of looks cool. I want to try this out. And I was kind of trying to go, I need to get more viewers and stuff like this. So I'll try some new stuff. And it really worked for me. It really did like bring up a whole different aspect of playing those games. It was awesome. So I would highly, highly recommend checking out Iron Meat, because if you like old school games, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so stinking good. Anyways, I don't have a whole lot to say about it because it's a very short game. I beat it in, I think, 4 hours. It was fairly easy for me too, and Contra is known as a hard game, but I played it on like a normal setting. You can crank it up and go way, way crazier with it. So Iron Meat is super awesome, but yeah, I just go play it. I don't have a whole lot to say other than it's Contra, but new. And then we come to Indiana Jones and the Great Circle for number 6. Oh my gosh. We just finished this. We just played it a couple weeks ago. So it was really interesting because back in late 2020 at the Game Awards, Machine Games and Microsoft announced that Machine Games was making an Indiana Jones game, and the world lost their mind. We were right smack dab in the middle of the pandemic. Myself, my family, my wife and I, we were in the midst of moving across the country here to Tennessee. And oh my gosh, it was just like a mind altering thing to see people lose their minds about Machine Games making an Indiana Jones game. If you don't know what Machine Games are or who they are, they made the new Wolfenstein games, which are super, super good. And it was really weird because people were just like, how are they going to do it? How are they going to do it? And I was like, dude, it's going to be like Wolfenstein, but with indie. Like, that's what they do. They've made a bunch of these games. They made like 4 of these games, these Wolfenstein games. It's going to be Wolfenstein, but with Indiana Jones. And then earlier this year, they finally showed off the first trailer. And people lost their mind again, but in a bad way. They were like, how are they making it first person? I can't believe they made it first person. What is this? And people were just mad about it. And I was like, are people stupid? Because it's Machine Games. They make first person shooters. It was gonna be a first person shooter, or at least first person, right? Super, super weird to see that. So when the game finally released on Game Pass earlier this month, It's only been out for 4 weeks, basically. I was really excited to play it. And when I started playing it, I was like, oh, this feels good, but weird at the same time. Not like I didn't understand it. I just didn't understand what tone they were going for, because it's an open world setting and you have all these different side quests and stuff. And I was just like, dude, this is kind of crazy. I thought it was just going to be like a linear, like, not hallway corridor shooter, but like you were going to be in a level and you would have to, get from point A to point B. It's not that at all. It's super open ended. And I loved having the ability to find disguises and, work my way into certain areas that I'm not supposed to, and stealth kill or stealth hurt, or, indie kills people, stealth kill people, and all that type of stuff. It was really, really, really cool. I ended up loving this game. Not initially, though. Initially, I was having fun. Initially, I was like, dude, this is a good game. This is a solid 7 or 8 out of 10 experience. But by the end of the game, I had so much fun. It's easily a 9. I wouldn't say 10. I'd say it's a 9. And the reason why I enjoyed it so much is because with Indiana Jones, if you watch the first couple of movies, or at least 1 and 3, it's in biblical artifacts. Like, that's the whole crux. The plot of Raiders of the Lost Ark is finding the Ark of the Covenant, right? In The Last Crusade, it's finding the Holy Grail, the cup that Jesus drank out of, and at the Last Supper. So it's all like poured into with this biblical artifacts and finding these artifacts, based on biblical stuff. And I always love that because, again, I'm a Christian. I love seeing God and the Bible and Jesus and all these other things that I hold more highly than anything else in the world, kind of infused into my favorite hobby. Like, I love that. In Retrocember a few years ago, when we were doing the NES games, I talked about on Christmas King of Kings, which is a Wisdom Tree video game. Wisdom Tree was this developer that made Bible games for the NES. And my favorite one, the one that I got for Christmas one year, was King of Kings, where you play as Mary and Joseph on a camel, going to, you play as the 3 wise men going to find baby Jesus in the manger. Like, how cool is that? So with Indiana Jones, I've always been gravitated towards that series because of that fact. And I was just like, the Great Circle sounds stupid. The Great Circle sounds like a very dumb name for an Indiana Jones adventure. I was like so thrown off by that name. I was like, maybe I won't play this. And then as I played through the game, I was like, this is kind of weird, but like in a fun, interesting way. Not off-putting, just weird. Then I got to the end. In the end, spoiler alert, by the way, you find Noah's Ark. You find Noah's Ark in Iraq on a mountaintop, and the Nazis are trying to take over Noah's Ark. The whole premise of the Great Circle is that there are multiple different ancient cities around the globe that all connect to make this circle. And stones from these ancient cities all have a not a Hebrew word, but a Aramaic word or something like that. It's this word that you speak, and it's basically like God's language. And if you speak it, power comes out. And if you use all these phrases together, it creates this really weird power. and it allows teleportation basically. Like that's kind of the whole like supernatural power is teleportation. In the middle of the game, you find a Nazi warship in the middle of or on the top of a snowy mountain in like in the Arctic or something like that. I can't remember exactly where you go. And you go, why, how did this happen? And you find out later, kind of near the end of the game, oh, teleportation. Got it. Ah, okay, cool. So that's kind of the whole superpower that the Nazis are trying to get a hold of. There are Nephilim in the game, which were basically fallen angels that came down to Earth and, had relations with humans and created giants. And that's where we get giants from. And so it was just like kind of mind-boggling to see this unfold in a video game in 2024. I thought that was really, really cool. So as I played through this game, I noticed all these things, and even like some of the little collectibles that you could pick up were really cool because you're picking up like this letter where it's literally a Bible verse from Genesis 12. And it was really funny too, because we were doing our small groups a few weeks ago, right before we broke for Christmas break. And the Bible verse that we were studying was Genesis 12, which talks about the Tower of Babel. And then literally like a week later in Indiana Jones picks up a piece of paper and goes, Genesis 12, and literally reads verbatim Genesis 12 about the Tower of Babel that I just read in small groups like a week ago. Like, it was just so weird to see that in 2024 in a major video game. So I like that a lot. And then at the end, when you find Noah's Ark, one of the major Nephilim characters, whose name is Locust, super weird name, who is voice acted and motion captured by Tony Todd, the Candyman himself, unfortunately, who passed away just a few months ago. So this, I believe, was his last role as Locust from Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Dude, super awesome actor. I love Tony Todd. Man, it's a bummer he passed away, but he is the giant in this game that you like battle and then you become friends with at the end, and then he saves you at the end, and he he's like trying to take control of the power, and the main bad guy, Nazi guy, whose name is Voss, has that super cool death scene at the end, like all good Indiana Jones scenes have, is a good death scene for the bad guy. This one's no joke. Like, I don't think anything will top Tut, who's the main character or the main bad guy in, what is it? Last Crusade, whose face melts, right? He's the face melting dude, Tut. Nothing's going to top that. But Voss's death gets close. He gets held up and lifted and levitated up in the air, and power comes down from on high, fills his body, light explodes out of every orifice as he's screaming, and then shrivels up into like this weird zombie-like corpse. Like, oh, dude, super, super cool. Awesome death scene. Anyways, like I said, there was some portions that I had a hard time with. There was some issues with puzzles, or, Gina, the girl character, I thought was just obnoxious throughout the entire game. She tells you the solution to the puzzle as soon as you walk through, which happened in God of War Ragnarok. You're hanging out in God of War Ragnarok, and you come up to a puzzle, and immediately Atreus like shouts out the solution to the puzzle, right? And that was so frustrating to me. I was like, dude, the whole reason I'm playing this game is to like have fun with the mechanics and solve these puzzles. I love puzzle solving in video games. And the side character just shouts out the solution as soon as you walk up to it. That actually happened during the stream too with Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. I had a few viewers, unfortunately, who were, when I would go into a shrine, they would immediately tell me the answer and solution to how to solve the puzzle. And I was like, dude, guys, come on, let me figure this out. I will ask you if I need some help. So it's kind of same thing there. I don't like it when games just shout out the solution to the puzzle before I even get to understand what the mechanics are of it, right? So that was a bummer. And then Gina is just kind of obnoxious. She's this character who kind of takes forceful control of the situation in a way that's very off-putting to me. Indiana Jones is the main character. Indiana Jones is why I'm playing this game. It is not called Gina and the Great Circle. So step aside, lady. And that's kind of where I kind of like drew a line in the sand and said, look, I'm done with this stuff. Please stop doing this. And then there was a couple puzzles that I got just super stuck with. Like there was one at the very, very end, right before we finished. It was the bonus round stream where you have to do this weird puzzle that rotates and it just takes too long and you're just telling people where to stand. And it took me like 20 minutes to solve because I just could not wrap my brain around it. And I had a hard time. I kind of rage quit it almost. But other than that, you know, I didn't have a problem with most of the other stuff in the game. It's a game that I would almost want to 100%. At least I would say it is worth playing all the side quests and doing every side quest thing there is in that game is absolutely worth it because some of the side quests are better than the main story. You think the main story is good, dude, do some of the side quests. There's one kind of near the end of the game that is a side quest where you go into this jungle ruin and there's already someone there. And you say, hey, what's going on? What are you doing? And it's this younger girl. And she's like, oh, Dr. Jones. Oh, I'm so surprised to see you. And he's like, do I know you? And she's like, yeah, you better. I'm your student. Because remember, Indiana Jones is a professor at a college. And so, and you actually start out the game there at that college and you got to walk around, which is super fun. But she's like, yeah, I'm one of your students. And I'm here with one of these guys. And he's like, is his name Voss? And he's a Nazi? And she's like, yeah, but that's not a big deal. Right? Anyways, not to spoil it too much, but basically Indiana Jones like kind of teams up with this student of his to kind of find this artifact. And she ends up betraying him. And you call it from a mile away. Like literally the first cutscene she's introduced, she side eyes him as he forgets who she is. And she's like, oh, I don't like you. Like you just can tell she's going to betray you. I called it out when we were streaming it. So I was really interested in seeing where that was going. And yeah, of course she does. But the way that she gets betrayed again after, oh my gosh, it's just so good. I try not to do super spoilery stuff. I don't want to give away everything, especially if it's a game that literally came out less than 30 days ago. But it's so good. And it's just a side quest. It's a completely missable thing in the game. So if you do play Indiana Jones, make sure that you play all of it. Do all the side quests. I guarantee you it's worth it. Oh, man. But anyway, that's number 6 of Game of the Year. Number 5 is Subside. And I know this is kind of weird because, like I said, I didn't stream this one. I just played it and just beat it a couple days ago. But I knew it was going to be in my top 10. Even when I played the demo earlier this year. And the reason why is because, number 1, it's VR. Number 2, it's water. I am fascinated with oceanography. It is one of my favorite things to learn about. I think the ocean is so incredibly cool and interesting. I am more fascinated with oceanography and the exploration of the ocean than I am space. Because space is just empty blackness. There's no aliens. There's planets and asteroids and kind of some weird phenomenon, but there's not a whole lot to actual real life space. The ocean, on the other hand, which is majority of our Earth, which still has not been explored, There are so many interesting things that are still being discovered on a, nearly daily basis down in the depths of the ocean that no eye has ever seen. It is incredible. And like people like James Cameron, who is a Hollywood director, made some of the biggest box office movies of all time, is also into that and has been the person who's gone the deepest in the world, like world record holder for submersible, like just crazy cool stuff like that. Anyways, Subside is a VR game where you scuba dive and kind of explore the ocean and rivers and stuff like that. And it's just super cool. I do maybe want to do a quick stream of it sometime within the next maybe week or two, just to show it off, or maybe even maybe I should just do a video of it. I'm going to try and do a lot more YouTube videos this year. That's kind of one of my main goals too, is do more videos, not just the streams. I might cut down on the nightly streams, depending on how many people watch, because the views and stuff like that have been not great over the last several months. And it's kind of gotten me down a little bit because no one watches. Like I'm getting like literally single digit views on streams and like no one's showing up. And it's just like, do people want this? Do they not want this? Are they just busy because it's the holidays? Who knows? Anyways, that's something that I'll have to figure out. But Subside is super cool because you feel alone in this world where you're scuba diving in the water. And it could be very, very shallow, or it could be extremely deep. It could be, out in the sunlight, or it can be underwater in a cave that's very constricting. And I could definitely see this not appealing to a large mass majority of people. But this is a game that feels like it's made almost exclusively for me. There is a flooded cave level where you are just in this underwater cave, and you have to, squeeze through these tiny, barely human squeezable areas. And it's kind of upsetting in a way. It's a little distressing in a way, and it's super fun for me. I get that in adrenaline rush a little bit from that quote unquote near death experience. It's the safest way to do something like that. Like I'll never do that in real life, but give it to me as an experience in VR. Oh dude, I am all about that. It is so much fun. There's also in that's not my favorite level. I think it's a really cool one, but there's a river level where you're just in this river, and the color scheme of the turquoise water and the brown orangish rocks and cliff faces. Like I want to say it's in either Arizona or New Mexico is where it seems like it's the locale. It is so good. It's so good that I just want to live there. And if a game makes me want to live in that area, it's doing something right. That is like one of the highest praises that I can give a game, is if it makes me want to straight up live in that game world. And that's what VR can do. So it's super fun. So that's number 5, Subside. Number 4, and I haven't talked about this at all because I didn't beat this game, unfortunately. So I have not talked about this game at all tonight in the last almost 3 hours. It is number 4 on my Game of the Year list, which is Expeditions, a Mud Runner game. It's a stupid subtitle, but it tells you kind of what it is. Expeditions is a Mud Runner series game. Mud Runner, Snow Runner, Spin Tires, all kind of the four-wheeling car game, right? We talked about Mud Runner VR earlier, but before that came out, Expeditions came out in March, and it was the March game of the month. Excuse me. It was the March game of the month, and I had a blast playing it. It is the streams that I had the highest view numbers in. I got double rated, which is the only time that happened, and I had almost 100 people watching the stream for a while, just watching me play Expeditions, this four-wheeling, exploration game. And that's what I liked about Expeditions versus SnowRunner or MudRunner. Snow and MudRunner are games where you have an open world and you have tasks that you need to perform. And those tasks are hauling thing A from point Z to point D, right? And that's all you're doing. You're just going from point A to point B, point A to point B, point A to point B, and just kind of doing this stuff and then exploring on the side. But the main thing of Expeditions is the exploring. There's things to do in it, but it's not the main thing. And so I had a blast with this game. Like I said, it is the streams, and it's unfortunate because like I hit that high fairly early this year in my streaming career, and I've never achieved anywhere near what I had. But basically, yeah, I had a stream where I had two bigger streamers raid me with like 20 and 40 people, 50 people. And that was a lot of fun. That was super, super cool. Unfortunately, the raids have kind of like just straight up dropped off a cliff, and it's a bummer. And this is something that, again, I'm not trying to get down during the game of the month, but I'm just kind of talking out loud. Like, why was I getting a lot of raids earlier this year, but not now? I think I've kind of built out what this stream is in a much bigger and better way over the course of this last year. In March, I was just playing games. In December, I am talking about video games on a more molecular basis level. I've got all the channel points and the subscriptions and the in the voices and all that stuff, and like kind of creating a more entertaining show. But it doesn't seem to be pulling the numbers the other stuff did. So it's kind of a little bit weird. And like I said, I'm just kind of talking out loud for that. But Expeditions was probably, and this is the category that I would have had this in as well, what was my favorite stream of the year? The Expedition streams, probably. One of them, at least, because with Expeditions, I had those people just flooding the channel and talking, and we had so much fun conversations. I had people coming in saying, what's your favorite cereal, and what's your favorite movie, and stuff like that. And that gave me a lot more interaction with you guys than just me talking for 2-3 hours straight. It was interaction, and that's what I love about the streams is interaction. And Expeditions just kind of was the vehicle for that, for a lack of a better term. But the game itself, top notch, super, super fun. I haven't gone back to it like I wanted to. I said I was going to. I bought the like super special edition with all the crazy DLC, and I haven't gone back to it yet. So maybe we'll do that this next year. But a lot of people were down on it because they're super big fans of SnowRunner, and SnowRunner like provides them a very granular amount of information and things, and Expeditions is a very surface level game. Like there at least at the point there wasn't a lot of extra stuff in the game when it came out. Like there was no multiplayer, there was no this or that, and like people were just complaining off the deep end. It was also interesting too because I did get one of the developers of the game in the stream. He came into the stream and talked to me for a little bit. He even joined the Discord channel. Like, how cool is that? I love it. And so, and we got some insights on some updates that were coming and some like bugs and things like that too. Like, it was really interesting to have a developer of one of my favorite games of the year be in the stream that I was playing that game in. Like, how cool is that? And talking to me. It's what I loved about it. So that's number 4. Number 3 is Satisfactory. Now, unfortunately, oh my gosh, I don't think I added Satisfactory to my game of the year or my games that I beat. Shoot, what happened here? I totally missed some stuff. Let me add that really quick. That was in October, I believe. Okay, I'll just leave that there for now, just so that I have it. Just so I have it. Anyways, Satisfactory is a game that has been out for a while, several years, in early access. One of the reasons why it's game number 3 in my top 10 games of 2024 is because it did something that not a lot of games do, which is come out on my birthday. It came out on September 10th of this year, which is my birthday. And it was like a birthday present to me. So right off the bat, like I just was like, yes. Number 2, it was one of the games that I've dumped more hours into than almost any other game ever. I've only probably dumped more hours into maybe 2 or 3 other games. I replayed the beginning portions of this game like 4 or 5 times, with each of those having probably 40 to 60 hours. And by the time I ended playing this game with a full brand new playthrough, it was 90-ish hours, I think, something like that, over the course of like a month and a half. In VR, by the way. Oh, I forgot to mention. Yeah, someone came up with a mod for VR. So it's the engine that is, sorry. It's getting late here. Satisfactory is created in the Unreal Engine 5 engine. And Unreal Engine 5 and 4, I believe, have the unique opportunity and ability to inject VR into it immediately. And there was a mod that came out January 1st or December 31st of last year, 2023. So just a year ago, a VR mod that injects VR into any Unreal Engine 4 or 5 game came out. And this is an Unreal Engine 5 game. So someone created a like really nice mod that allows full VR for Satisfactory, which is one of my favorite games. So, dude, I was like super stoked into it. And that's kind of what made this game so fun for me. Satisfactory is basically a mining / resource gathering game where you mine and gather resources from the planet that you land on. And that's all you do. That's literally all you do is you mine these resources and then ship them off to your space elevator in space. That's it. That's all you do. But you have to explore, and the exploring is the fun part. The exploring and crafting these factories that have all these moving parts and conveyor belts to take one material or element and craft it with another one to create this thing, and then these things create other things. It is so crazy that I just could not stop playing him. I played it off stream for the first time too, like not first time like ever, but I'm saying this year I played every video game in front of a camera until Satisfactory. Satisfactory is what broke that for me. Mostly because there is a lot of waiting around. And so I was in the middle of like just waiting for the stream to happen, but I wanted to kind of get some stuff done. So I would play the game off of stream, offline for, like an hour or 2, and then play it on stream for another like 3 or 4 hours late at night. Like it was super fun. So I really enjoyed it. That's Satisfactory. That's number 3. Number 2 is Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3 Remastered. I already talked about it earlier this evening, but Tomb Raider was a very special series for me growing up. The first one I didn't get into. I didn't beat or didn't play at all when it first came out. Tomb Raider 2 was the game that I got into, and I was super into it. I loved it. I played it on the PC. I got in trouble when I was younger because I was trying to look up bad codes for that game. That never actually worked. Things like that. But Tomb Raider, really, really interesting game series. It's something that has stood the test of time. It has stood around. Lara Croft is a really, really good protagonist. And, they're making 4, 5, and 6 remastered in just a month and a half away. February 14th of 2025, we're going to get Tomb Raider 4, 5, and 6 remastered, which I'm excited about because not only will we get back to Tomb Raider 4, which we never finished, but I never played 5 and 6 either. So that's really cool. I don't know how much I can talk about Tomb Raider 1, 2, and 3 remastered because it's just Tomb Raider. And I have a blast with those games. I love the tank control. I'm super happy that Team Beef made a VR mod for Tomb Raider 1 too. We played that as well this year. I didn't finish it because I finished Tomb Raider 1 earlier in the year. And then like a month later, I was in the VR mod. And I'm like, I just beat this game. I don't want to do the whole game again in VR, even though I kind of do now. So maybe we'll do that this year. So yeah, Tomb Raider, just unbelievable. Super good game. And then my number one with a bullet, game of the year for 2024, Batman Arkham Shadow, a VR only exclusive game in the Arkham universe of the Batman franchise. And I didn't talk about this, but the voice cast is really good. Number one, the Scarecrow, Dr. Crane, Elijah Wood, Frodo himself is the voice actor for the Scarecrow. That's pretty stinking cool, right? And I couldn't pick up on that. I didn't know that until later on, and I went, oh yeah, I remember hearing that. Not only is Tomb Raider or Batman one of my favorite characters, but the Arkham universe is just so well done. And I'm really glad that the people at Camouflage Studios loves the series like I do. You can tell that they put love and care into it. We played it on stream. We just beat it a few nights ago on Christmas night. And sorry, I think it's raining. Anyways, we played it on Christmas night. I beat it and I didn't want to stop. Not only did I not want to stop and go through and replay more of it, but I got to talk about some, I got to talk about the spoiler at the end, the ending. So spoiler alert for anyone who's still watching that does not want to hear spoilers. I'm just going to pause for a second here. The ending of Batman Arkham Shadow blew me away. I was not expecting it. And the reason why I wasn't expecting it is because my mind wasn't going there with what they did. Some of it, sure. But basically, without going in recapping the entire game, Batman goes undercover as Matches Malone, which is his kind of like alter ego that he like tries to drum up info in the crime world without being Batman or Bruce Wayne. So it's his like third alter ego. And he goes into Blackgate as a prisoner, like goes undercover in Blackgate as a prisoner and is trying to figure out what's going on in Blackgate with these like murders and the Rat King. All of that to kind of tie together to the very end where Harvey Dent is horribly scarred and becomes Two-Face, which super interesting side note here. They do this weird thing that I did not understand at the very beginning, and I thought was weird, but I think is very well earned. And actually, I really like this canon is Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent are besties. They're best friends. And they grew up together and champion each other. And it was really, really interesting to see that played out in these weird cutscenes. The cutscenes I still don't understand, but it's this top-down view of the scene playing out in these cutscenes. but the camera is like pulled so far up into the ceiling. Like it's really weird that you're seeing such a far away angle from what's going on screen. But it's really interesting. It's a very artistic choice, perhaps. But man, yeah, it's cool. I really dug that aspect of it. Harvey and Bruce Wayne are best friends. So when Bruce Wayne, when is it Bruce Wayne? I can't remember. When Harvey Dent is the DA, the district attorney, and you as Matches Malone are on the witness stand, and the accident that scars Harvey and makes him become Two-Face happens. It's an accident and you are not responsible, but it makes it seem like you as Matches Malone are responsible. And you as Matches Malone are actually Batman / Bruce Wayne. And so you have this like layered depth of, oh my gosh, what happened? I can't save him. I'll break character. This is my best friend who might be dying, and I can't do anything about that. And like all this extra layer to that. That's not even the crazy part. And you getting up in front of Two-Face and him being horribly scarred and looking super awesome in VR, super rad. But the crazy aspect is, during the course of the game, and this is the ultimate spoiler for this game, so just mute for like 2 minutes if you don't want to hear this. But the ultimate spoiler for this game is, over the course of the game, you are in the Blackgate prison and there's a commissary, and the commissary guy who's running it is known as Joe. And Joe is kind of just like this old dude who's like kind of cool and, kind of befriends you and helps you out. It's really, really interesting. And again, you're undercover as Matches Malone. At the very, 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 very end of the game, Harvey Dent, as Harvey Dent before he's Two-Face, has found Bruce's killer. Bruce Wayne's parents' killer. Because over the course of these cutscenes, Bruce Wayne and Harvey are like, oh man, I can't believe my parents died. And, oh, you'll find vengeance. You'll find them. I'm going to go to court, and I, as Harvey Dent, am going to go to court and become a district attorney. And I won't stop until I find your parents' killers, Bruce. I love you that much. You're my best friend, type of thing. And so you get this phone call from Harvey Dent / possibly Two-Face. I can't remember. And he says, Bruce, I found your parents' killer, the guy who murdered your parents. His name is Joe Chill, and he works at the commissary of Blackgate Prison. And so you realize that Joe from the commissary, who you've been kind of hanging out with and is in your like prison buddy and has been, buddy with you the entire game, is actually Joe Chill, the killer of Batman's parents. And it's just like, whoa, I did not expect that, because Joe's just kind of a regular name, right? We all know Joe Chill killed Batman's parents, not the Joker, because that was Tim Burton, out of canon. But obviously it's Joe Chill. But man, it was just like, no way, because they're already doing the Two-Face thing, and they already had Harley Quinn and Dr. Crane be, in that game as well. And like, they're already like putting all of these things in that you don't want Spider-Man 3-itis. And what I mean by that is all these different villains crammed into this one game together. You don't want to have that happen. You need to have it separate. You need to have like some resistance to just throwing everything in there. The Joker's in there as well. Like I said, you do have the Arkham Origins game universe in the Arkham universe and referenced a little bit. You don't see Joker. You just talk to him through a wall. And that was actually interesting. Like I said earlier, I'm not a big fan of like all this fan service crap. I don't need references up the wazoo, but I actually liked that. I went, oh, I don't need the Joker in this game. Please don't do that. But over the course of like that few, I'd say there's like 15, 20 minutes, you continually talk to Joker through a wall in solitary confinement. I thought that was awesome. I thought that was super cool and well done. Everything about this game is well done. Like I said, you can tell that they really love Batman. And not just Batman, the Arkham universe that Rocksteady has created. After you do the tutorial area of the game, you go out into Gotham City just really quickly. It's very little. But I knew that world. I knew exactly where I was when I got out of that enclosure and dropped down into Gotham City for the first time. I went, I know that, 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 because I played through Arkham Asylum, City, and Night multiple times. I know Gotham City and what it looks like. So, man, they just went above and beyond to really make it feel like it's all one connected game or universe or whatever you want to call it. And the people at Camouflage Studios just did a phenomenal job with that. And it is why it's my game of the year for 2024. I could go on and on and on about this, and I won't, because number one, I'm tired. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. Oh my gosh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, it's been a fun one. It's been a real blast recapping. And that's what I've been looking forward to this for months. And unfortunately, the last couple of weeks, because I've been sick this last week and just a bunch of other stuff, and it's freezing. I'm so cold right now. I was starting to go, oh no, should I not do this? Maybe I should just not do this. Maybe who does anyone care or listen to this? And starting to get really down on myself over the last couple of days. And I know that that's just not what should be happening. I should not be listening to that type of stuff. That's of the devil. God has me here for a purpose, and streaming, as goofy as that sounds, like I know I should be doing this right now. So just to kind of end this whole stream, I want to, number one, say thank you to anyone who listens to this podcast, anyone who watches the streams. Whether you are a subscriber or not, it doesn't matter, because I'm doing this for a different reason. And that reason is because I feel like God has me here for a purpose. And I hope that I shine his light to the rest of the world. I can be an example, and it has nothing to do with me. It's all about him. That I can show people that you don't have to live one way and be upset and terrified of what the world has to offer, because the world has nothing to offer. God has so much more in store for every single person. And we just gotta search for it, and it's right there. So number one, thank you. Number two, I'm not down about this. I'm having fun. I'm having a blast, and I hope everyone still likes what I do, because I'm going to continue doing this. Number three, join the Discord if you want to. I've been doing this Retrocember thing for the last couple of weeks here, and I've been saying it ever since I started. If you join the Discord throughout the month of December, I will give you a free game. And unfortunately, no one has taken me up on that offer. And I think that's a little weird. I would totally join a Discord if I could get a free game. So I'm extending it for this as well. If you join the Discord, I'll just straight up give you a free game. If you have any desire to talk about video games, That's what that Discord is for. I'm in there every day. I post the schedule for every stream, which I stream every day pretty much, except for the last couple of days because I've been sick. Actually, I've been streaming for after that as well. Sorry, there's some weird stuff going on with the Alexa. Anyways, I'm gonna finish this. Thank you guys so much for watching. I pray that everyone has a wonderful 2025. Take care. God bless. And I'll see you in 2025. Till then, bye.